Forbidden Love, an exciting romance, complete series, written by Lucia Jordan, narrated by Akea Berdine. Book 1. Olivia self-consciously tugged at her skirt in a useless attempt to make it longer. She cursed her boss for giving her this assignment. Of all the people who worked at the magazine, who would be better suited for this? Olivia was the one who'd been stuck with it. It wasn't fair that she was convinced that her boss was just looking for a reason to fire her. And if she fucked up this article, she would surely be in the unemployment line. Why on earth her boss wanted an in-depth article about the BDSM lifestyle was beyond her. Of course, thanks to the popularity of that book, 50 Shades of Grey, BDSM was the newest fad, the next big thing. Everyone was doing it. Olivia's boss, Tracy, didn't want just another article about what it was. She wanted a first-hand account of what it was like to be in the lifestyle. Tracy had said that Olivia didn't have to engage in any sexual activities, unless she wanted to, of course. But she did have to go to a BDSM club and talk to people who were in the thick of it. So it was now Friday night, and Olivia found herself inside Allegiant, the most exclusive BDSM club in the city. She sat at the end of the bar and refused to look around or make eye contact with anyone. When she first walked through the door, she'd seen a woman tied and bound to a cross on the wall, while 2 men pleasured her. She'd also seen a woman with a collar and chain, like a dog walking around on all fours. Then there was the couple in the far corner. The woman had her hands cuffed behind her back and a ball gag in her mouth as she rode a man in the reverse cowboy position. Everyone was half naked and dressed in leather. It shocked her that people would just have sex in public like that. Actually, it was quite appalling. Didn't people have any decency? Didn't they realize that sex was something personal, something that should be cherished and shared privately? She was so far out of her element here it wasn't funny. The bartender set a fresh glass of wine in front of her. "Oh, I didn't order another one," she said, pushing it away. The bartender smiled and pushed it back towards her. "It's for Master Dean." He nodded towards a small round table to the right with 4 comfortable-looking armchairs around it. Olivia's gaze followed the bartender's nod, and she found a very attractive, very muscular man. He was sitting in one of the upholstered chairs, his arms resting on the arms of the chair, his large booted feet planted on the floor, knees bent, a glass of liquor dangling from his fingertips, and a faint smile on his lips. His massive leather-clad thighs were comfortably spread, showcasing the impressive bulge in his crotch. Olivia raked her gaze over his body and landed on his face, their eyes locking with one another. His eyes were as dark as the leather of his pants, and dangerous-looking. The man lifted his finger and crooked it at her, motioning for her to come to him. Then he gave her a smile that was wicked as sin. Her breath caught in her throat. That's what you get for making eye contact. She should have known better. Tracy had told her to mingle, to get the inside story. So Olivia took a deep breath and climbed off the bar stool she'd been sitting on. She slowly started towards him. She felt like a bunny wandering into a fox den, and she couldn't believe she was actually doing this. The man was a stranger, for crying out loud. She stopped in front of him and he patted his leg. Olivia looked at him with disbelief. Did he really just motion for her to sit on his lap? He patted his leg again and she noticed his eyes darkened. Holy crap, that was hot. Hesitantly, she sat on his lap. He put his hands on her lower back. The heat from his touch seared her skin. "What's your name?" he said. His voice was so deep, so manly, and so full of confidence it made her body tingle with desire. "Olivia," she said. "And yours?" "Master Dean," he said, lightly grazing his fingers up and down her arm. Olivia nodded. That one word, master, had made his position and his intentions clear, and the fact that she didn't have a collar around her neck meant she was fair game to any dom in this club, providing she wanted to be. She was a journalist. She'd done her research before she came here. In fact, she'd spent an entire week doing research, and would have spent longer if her deadline for this story wasn't fast approaching. One thing she learned, The submissive had the power to accept or deny a master at their leisure. That was the one little fact that made her feel safe. She could be here, observe, mingle, but not have to do anything she didn't want to do. "I've noticed you were fidgeting with this," he said, gently tugging on the hem of her red leather skirt. "Is it bothering you?" "Yes," she said, her voice almost giving out. The feel of his fingers on her skin was distracting. "Why?" He slipped a finger up her skirt and grazed her thigh. She was frozen in place. The sensation of his touch was mind-blowing, yet he was a stranger. He shouldn't be touching her like that, and she sure as hell shouldn't be allowing it. But she couldn't bring herself to get off of his lap, either. It feels too short. I feel like my ass is hanging out." She laughed nervously. "If you ask me, it's much too long." Dean brought his glass to his mouth and took a drink, keeping his gaze locked on hers the entire time. Then he set the glass on the table in front of him and lifted her legs, draping them over the arm of the chair. She sucked in a breath and waited. "You have gorgeous legs, Olivia." The feel of his fingertips trailing up and down her legs made her shiver, although she didn't know if it was that or the cool breeze she felt blowing up her skirt. "You shouldn't try to cover them up." "Thank you," was all she managed to say. His fingers continued to roam the length of her legs, and she could feel herself getting excited, which was so crazy. Olivia was not the type of woman to get excited by perverse, kinky, sexual acts. "This is your first time, isn't it?" God, am I that obvious? "Yeah, it is." "That's okay." He smiled and her heart fluttered. His smile was breathtaking. "Why don't you tell me what you're looking for?" I don't really know." Dean cocked a brow. "So, you came to a BDSM club alone, and you don't know why?" "How do you know I'm here alone?" He smiled again. "I've been watching you since you walked through the door." "Oh." She really didn't know what else to say. "A woman as sexy as you will get picked up very easily in a place like this." His fingers left her legs and moved to her arms. He ran his index finger up her arm and across her collarbone. "If you don't know what you want, and you don't know the players, you could find yourself in a situation you don't want to be in." She swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "Take Master Jeff over there, for example." Dean nodded toward the corner where a woman was tied up in something that looked like a harness. She was gagged, had clamps on her nipples, and he was yanking on her hair while he had what appeared to be really rough sex with her. Olivia looked away from the scene, embarrassed. It made her feel like a voyeur to watch them, even though they were in a public club. "It's okay to watch them," Dean whispered. "That's why they do it out here. They get off on knowing people are watching them." Olivia found herself watching them again. She couldn't help herself, and she realized she liked watching them. It turned her on in a way she didn't know was possible. Dean had moved his hands from her collarbone up to her chin and lips. He rubbed his thumb across her bottom lip. "You see, Master Jeff likes to push his subs. He gets off on their pain." "Why?" she whispered, still staring at them. "That seems mean." Dean chuckled softly. "No, it's not mean. Master Jeff is a very considerate dom. He knows what he likes, and he only takes subs who like the same. He pushes them to their limit, but never past." "How does he know their limits?" She was fascinated by all of this, and she wanted to know more. Everything. "It takes time, but he learns through experimentation. Each time he's with a sub, he tries something new, something different. If it works, he takes it one step further. If it doesn't, he tries something else." He ran the pad of his thumb over her lip again, and then he slid his hand around to the back of her neck. Then he brought her face to his and crushed her lips with a forceful kiss. His teeth nipped at her bottom lip. His tongue prodded and explored her mouth with hungry dominance. Beneath her, Olivia felt his erection getting progressively larger, and it excited her. She put her hands around his neck and leaned into his kiss. enjoying it a lot more than she thought she would. It was a kiss unlike any she'd ever had before, and it ended much too soon in her opinion. When Dean pulled away, she actually made a small moan to protest. Her eyelids fluttered open and she was met with his dark eyes. They were hungry, imploring. She licked her lips, which tingled from his kiss. "Then there's Master Rob," he continued, as if nothing had just happened between them, but she noticed the way his lips were moist and swollen from their kiss, and from the size of his erection, she knew he wasn't unaffected by it. That made her feel better about her own reaction to him. "He likes slaves, not submissives." "What's the difference?" "Slaves live with their masters and are at the ready 24/7. Submissives are more like exclusive girlfriends, who are there when their masters need or want them. But it's not full-time." Dean's lips found hers again, and she kissed him eagerly, wanting more of what he had to offer. She felt like a woman starved for affection, begging and taking whatever he had to offer. He said, pulling away and licking his lips. "So if you don't know what you want or what you like, you could end up with a dom like Jeff or Rob." Olivia nodded. That made sense. And then asked the one question she probably should have asked at the start of all of this. "And what do you like, Master Dean?" "You." Her breath hitched, and her excitement skyrocketed. "I meant, what do you like? Slaves or submissives?" "You tell me, Olivia. What are you? A slave or a submissive?" He shifted in the chair, and his erection pushed against her, ratcheting her desire even higher. "A submissive, I guess," she said, even though she'd never been a submissive a day in her life. She had no idea how to do it, but in that moment she felt like it was easier to play the role than it was to explain her true intentions for being there. "I like submissives," he said, his voice dripping with promise. "In fact, I like breaking in new submissives. That's kind of what I'm known for around here. I train new subs, teach them the lifestyle, and then send them on their way to find a more permanent master." Talk about luck. The first and only dom she meets is the man who can give her all the information she needs for her article. And if she decided to let things go any further with him, she'd really have an insider's perspective. Imagine the article she could write with both the perspective of a dom and sub. It would surely put her on the fast track to a promotion. Dean nipped at her earlobe and then nuzzled her neck. "I came here tonight to have sex, Olivia. And I'd really like it to be with you. Would you like to join me in a dungeon room?" "A what?" "A dungeon room? That just sounded scary." "It's a private room in the basement of the club." He kissed her neck and she tilted her head, moaning at the exquisite feeling of his hot mouth on her skin. "So would you like to join me tonight? I promise to break you in nice and easy." "Yes," she said breathlessly. "I'd like that a lot." She got off Dean's lap and took his preferred hand. He led her out of the main club and down a long corridor, stopping in front of a door near the end of the hallway. He swiped the plastic key card and the door swung open. Olivia stepped inside and looked around. The room looked like a dungeon. It was dark with no windows and cement walls, which were lined with so many toys, whips, chains, and other things she couldn't name, and it was mildly intimidating. "Do you have a safe word?" he asked as he stalked further into the room. "A what?" "A safe word. Okay, lesson number 1. Don't ever start to play until you've chosen a safe word. It should be something personal to you that you can easily remember." "Okay, how about deadline?" Dean cocked a brow and laughed. "Deadline?" She felt her face flush with embarrassment. Was that a bad safe word? "Yeah, I always have deadlines at work, and my boss is always screaming about them. I've grown to associate unpleasant things with that word." "Deadline it is, then." He sauntered towards her, stopping only once their bodies were close enough to touch. "Lesson number 2." He held up 2 fingers. "When you are in the presence of your dom, you must show him respect and obedience." "How do you do that?" unlike Dean, who was speaking in generalities. She wanted to make this personal. She wanted to get the full experience of what it was like to be a sub. Get down on your knees. He pointed to the floor. Olivia went to her knees. Dean stood behind her. He took her hands and brought them around behind her back. Then he straightened her back and gently lowered her head so that it was downcast. Like that, he said, his voice tight. When your dom enters a room, you present for him, just like that. And you stay like that until he tells you otherwise. Understood? Yes. Good. Olivia watched his feet as he walked back around to stand in front of her. She wasn't sure what to do, so she remained perfectly still, waiting. It wasn't the most comfortable position to be in, especially for a long period of time. I have to say, it's a major turn-on to see a woman showing her obedience like that, and you look fantastic in that position. Thank you, she said. She heard him take a deep breath. All right, lesson number 3. You will only speak when spoken to, and you will always refer to your dom as sir or master. Each dom has their own preference. I like to be called sir. That is what you will call me from this point forward. Is that clear? Olivia nodded. Good. Lesson number 4. If you don't do as I say, there will be punishment. Punishment? Her voice was barely audible to her own ears, and she was amazed that he heard her. Don't worry. We'll take it easy this first time. If I do anything to hurt you, or if I do something you don't like, you call out your safe word, okay? Okay. Nerves racked her body, and she felt nauseous. Okay, what? He said in a demanding voice. Okay, sir, Olivia said with wide eyes. Wow, he wasn't joking about that, was he? Good girl, Olivia. He rewarded her by bringing her to her feet and giving her a kiss that made her knees weak. Now remove your skirt and go lie down on the bed. Olivia's hands trembled as she unzipped her skirt and stepped out of it. Dean's eyes were like daggers on her back as he watched her walk towards the bed and lie down. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and her body thrummed with sexual anticipation. She licked her lips and waited. She couldn't believe she was actually doing this. Granted, she had had a few one-night stands during college, but she hadn't had one since becoming a responsible adult. Add to that the fact that she was in a dungeon room in the basement of a BDSM club, with a dom who wanted to do God knows what with her. She had seriously lost her mind. Dean approached and stood beside the bed, his head cocked to the side, smiling. He put his hand on her ankle and slowly coursed it up the length of her body. Her flesh erupted in goosebumps and she suppressed a shudder. You have a beautiful body, he said. Thank you, sir. He grinned broadly, clearly pleased with her ability to follow his rules. Dean took her hand and placed it on his crotch. She gently squeezed his erection, impressed with the size, and he groaned. You've made me so hard, Olivia. His explicit words shocked her and made her panties wet. Dean stepped away from the bed and stood in front of a wall of toys. Silk scarves or handcuffs? He asked. Silk, please, sir. Dean plucked 2 purple silk scarves from the wall and approached her again. Spread your legs for me. Olivia took a deep breath and then spread her legs as wide as she could, watching with fascination as Dean tied each of her ankles to the bedpost. The silk felt nice against her skin. Her panties were becoming increasingly wet, and she wished he'd just get on with it already. The waiting was killing her. Now put your hands above your head. Grab the bars, and do not let go. Olivia inhaled deeply and did as she was told. Dean kneeled between her legs. One by one he unbuttoned her poor excuse for a shirt, until it fell open, exposing her breasts. The combination of the cool air and the feel of his calloused fingers rubbing over her breasts had her nipples hardening. Dean pinched her nipples a little harder, eliciting a startled cry from her. Holy shit! The pain was fleeting, but the pleasure washed over her in one wave after another. She arched into his touch. wanting more of the delicious, pleasurable pain he was giving her.
You like that, don't you?
Yes, sir. It surprised her just how much she liked it, actually. As soon as she said that, he stopped and lowered his face between her legs. Yes, finally, she thought. He gently blew a breath over her panties, the heat penetrating through the sheer satin material. He put his hand on each of her inner thighs before pressing a firm kiss against her mound. When was the last time a man had gone down on her? It was pathetic that she couldn't remember. Hell, she wasn't sure she could even remember the last time she'd had sex. She groaned and tried to wiggle closer to him.
I told you not to move.
He nipped at her, catching her panties and one of her lips in his teeth. She cried out and stilled, tightening her grip on the bars of the headboard. He resumed his slow, torturous onslaught tease of her sex, with hot kisses and feather-like caresses, until she was panting with need. Then he gathered her panties to the side and flicked his tongue over her clit. Olivia half screamed, half moaned. She was so fucking horny that little bit of contact had her mind swirling and her body teasing for an orgasm. Most of the reason was because of Dean, because of what he was doing to her. But the other reason was because her last boyfriend wasn't very adventurous in the bedroom. Then again, she wasn't either.
Dean hummed against her folds. You taste so good, Olivia. And you're so eager.
He chuckled.
It makes my cock so hard to know you're hot for me.
He slowly licked up one side of her folds and down the other. She swore the room exploded into 100 different colors.
Do you want to come?
Yes, sir, she whimpered. Christ, she couldn't believe it. All he'd done was kiss her, pinch her nipples, and lick her clit, and she was ready to come already. It used to take her a long time to get to this point with her ex, and most of the time, he finished way before she was even close. So the fact that a complete stranger could get her off so quickly was exciting and a little terrifying. It was like she had no control over her body. He shoved 2 fingers into her pussy, his tongue circling her clit, and she lost it. Her lips bucked, lifting her ass off the bed. Dean pinned her down with an arm across her stomach and continued to finger her.
Yeah, that's it, Olivia. Let it go. Give it to me, baby. Let me taste you.
Sweet Lord, his voice, his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. And then she did as he asked. She gave him a taste of herself. It all happened so fast. The way her orgasm tore through her body was violent and intense, and she nearly passed out from the sheer force of it. Her fingers and hands ached from holding the bars on the headboard so damn tight. She wanted nothing more than to squeeze her thighs together to ease the throbbing tremors that were racking her core. But she couldn't, because her ankles were still tied to the bed. Dean brought his body up to cover hers, and then he kissed her. Her taste lingered on his lips, and it was erotic to taste herself on him like that. What was even more erotic was that she was getting aroused again. Normally, if she were lucky enough to orgasm, she was good for a few days, but with Dean, she found herself craving more. Without thinking about it, she let go of the headboard and put her arms around his neck. He grabbed her wrist and pinned them above her head.
No letting go, remember?
He said, drawing out her bottom lip with his teeth before kissing her again. Yes, sir. Sorry.
I'm going to tell you something, Olivia,
he said, as he released her hands and kneeled between her legs again. Then he began to unbutton his pants.
Something I've never said to any sub before. Do you want to know what it is?
Yes, sir. Her curiosity was piqued. He smiled down at her in that cocky, arrogant way he had about him.
No sub, no woman, has ever made me as hard as you have.
He pulled a condom from his pants pocket and then pulled his pants down over his hips.
Which is why I need to fuck you so badly. I feel like I'm going to die if I don't get inside you right now.
It was a boost to her ego to know she turned him on so much. Olivia watched as he rolled the condom over his long, thick cock. He was much larger than any man she'd ever been with, and she knew it was probably going to hurt. but at the same time that knowledge excited her. She hoped it would be like when he pinched her nipples, painful at first, and then blend into the most exquisite pleasure she'd ever felt.
I'm not normally so impatient. I like to make my subs come 3 or 4 times. Next time.
He settled between her legs, the head of his cock nudging her entrance. She inhaled sharply.
Next time.
He grunted as he pushed inside of her.
Holy fuck,
he breathed out.
Next time I'm going to spank that tight little ass of yours, and I'm going to make you beg for my cock.
Olivia held her breath. Next time? Spanking? Like everything else about him and this lifestyle, it excited and terrified her all at the same time. And if she wasn't consumed with the fact that his hard cock was fully inside of her, his hips frantically pumping her, she would have tried to wrap her mind around the idea of seeing him again. She assumed that in his world, a second meeting held a lot of implications. From her research, she knew that it usually meant he wanted to be her dom, her master. Kinky sex with him for the purpose of research was one thing. Fully submitting to him for a long-term relationship was something totally different. She didn't know if she was ready for that. Not so close to her breakup, anyway. But the thought of not seeing him again, that was equally as scary.
Oh, God, Olivia, baby.
He ground out as he repeatedly shoved his cock in and out of her with merciless determination. He took hold of her hands again, intertwining their fingers, and his mouth crushed hers. Baby. Was it normal for a dom to give his sub a pet name? It seemed so out of character with the lifestyle. She'd be lying if she said she didn't like it, though. It made her feel special, even though she knew she wasn't. She was just another in a line of subs. Her ex hadn't cared enough to flatter her with names like that, so she was going to enjoy it, even if it was only in her mind. Please, sir, can I touch you? Olivia wiggled her fingers beneath his vice-like grip.
Yes, but only because this is your first time.
He released her hands and she clutched his shoulders, digging her fingernails into his skin, causing him to cry out in pain. God damn it! He pushed his weight into his arms and looked down at her, her hands falling from his shoulders. Shit! She hadn't meant to hurt him. Dean slowed his pace.
Am I hurting you, baby?
His voice was suddenly different. It was softer and full of concern. It gave her chills. No, sir. Dean increased his pace again, rocking into her with such force, her head would have banged against the headboard if her ankles weren't secured to the bed. She reached around and grabbed his ass, surprised to find it unforgiving in her hands. It was muscular, clenching and unclenching with each thrust of his hips.
Fuck.
He drew out the word.
I want you to come, Olivia. Now.
The concept of coming at his command seemed ludicrous, but that's exactly what happened. She chalked it up to the fact that she was already so close and told herself that it had nothing to do with his command. Her stomach tightened and her body convulsed at the same time as Dean's. Their orgasms collided inside of her, leaving her dizzy and unable to breathe. He collapsed on top of her and they lay there silently for several moments. Her mind was reeling from what just happened. 2 orgasms within minutes? It was unheard of for her. Yet it was something she knew she was going to crave during those nights when she was alone and longing for the touch of a man. No, not any man. Dean. She was afraid that after tonight, after this, no man would ever live up to him and the way he made her feel.
I have to apologize,
he said, keeping his face buried in her neck.
That wasn't my best performance. I promise it will be a lot more satisfying next time.
It's okay, sir. Not his best performance. She shuddered to think about what he could do if he was on top of his game. Maybe she should tell him just how satisfying it was for her. That it was literally the best sex of her entire life. Maybe that would have made him feel better, even though she didn't think he had anything to feel bad about. Dean eased out of her and climbed off the bed. He finished removing his pants. That was strange that he'd take off his pants after they were finished having sex, unless he was planning to do it again.
Are you okay? If I hurt you in any way, you have to tell me.
No, sir, I'm fine. My fingers are a little cramped from holding onto the bars. God, she was exhausted. He untied her legs and helped her to sit up. Thank you, sir. He sat on the foot of the bed and took her legs, placing them across his lap. Then he massaged each of her ankles.
I've been told I tie the restraints a little too tight at times.
They are fine, sir. She watched as he worked his hands around her ankles and up her shins and calves. Olivia propped herself up with her hands behind her, and she let her head fall back to her shoulders. That feels good.
So tell me, Olivia, was it what you expected? Did you find what you were looking for?
That was a loaded question. Honestly?
Lesson number 5, do not ever lie to your dom. This type of relationship is based on trust, communication, and mutual respect. Without those 3 things, this will never work.
Okay, well, no. It wasn't what I expected. It was better.
Better?
He set her right foot back on the bed and concentrated on her left foot.
How was it better?
She just realized she hadn't been calling him sir. He hadn't corrected her, and she hoped he wasn't going to punish her without warning. Well, sir,
There's no need to keep calling me sir. Play is over.
Oh, how am I supposed to know that? Is that something you tell your subs? He smiled, and she saw a twinkle of amusement in his eyes.
No. You will learn by the tone of my voice.
Dean cleared his throat and said,
Kiss me.
His voice was deep and commanding. He was also sexy as hell. Olivia found herself getting on her hands and knees and crawling towards him, as if propelled by some unforeseen force. Kneeling in front of him, she pressed her lips to his. Then he took complete control of the kiss and stole her breath.
God, you're a great kisser.
That time his voice was different. It sounded normal. I see, she said.
You're a quick learner.
She smiled at his compliment. So, I can see the appeal for a dom in this lifestyle. Being in control, having a woman do whatever you say. But what does a sub get out of all of this?
That's the common misconception about this lifestyle, and it really pisses me off. Yes, doms are in control, but we have no real control over anything. The sub has it all.
What? She laughed. How is that possible?
The safe word. A dom can only go as far as his sub will allow. Once that word is said, everything stops. And I mean everything.
He laughed.
Most people think that a dom is in it for the control, and we are in a way. But more than that, we're in it because we get immense pleasure from giving our subs pleasure. If our subs are not happy, then we are not happy. It's as simple as that.
Olivia gave him a confused look. I'm still not sure I get it. If doms get off on giving pleasure to a woman, why not just go get a girlfriend?
Because the control is arousing too. But it's not the primary focus of this kind of relationship. That's what a lot of people don't understand. They think doms are just controlling sexual deviants, and we're not.
Huh. She wasn't a stupid person, but for some reason this didn't make any sense to her. It sounded like Dean was talking in circles.
Like I said, it's about trust, communication, and mutual respect. A simple boyfriend-girlfriend relationship isn't bound by any rules. In a dom-sub relationship, there are firm rules in place for both parties.
Dean pulled her onto his lap so that she was straddling him. She was surprised to find him semi-erect.
Consider your last relationship. Were you comfortable telling him anything that was on your mind?
No.
In fact, lack of communication was only one of their many problems. With your dom, you can. You can tell him whatever you want, and he will respect you enough to listen, without judgment, and then if needed, he'll help you.
That sounded like a pipe dream to her. There was no way that kind of relationship could exist between a man and a woman who were having sex. It just didn't happen.
Were you able to explore your sexual desires with your last boyfriend?
Dean cupped her breasts in his hands and kneaded them. His thumb grazed over her nipple before pinching it in that way that sent a jolt of pleasure straight to her clit.
Before tonight, did you know you liked your nipples pinched?
He lowered his head and took her hard nipple into his mouth, swirling his tongue around it. She arched into him and moaned. No.
With your dom, you will. You'll learn things about yourself that you never knew. You'll be pushed into your sexual limits, and in the process, you'll have more pleasure than you ever thought possible.
She lost a little more focus each time he touched her. Does it go both ways?
What? The sexual discovery? Yes and no. Most doms know exactly what they like, so there really isn't any self-discovery for them. But they do get pleasure from exploring their subs, from learning what they like and then giving it to them.
Dean kissed his way from her breasts up to her throat and jaw. He nipped at her chin before kissing her fully on the mouth. When he finally released her, she said, I meant the trust and communication. Do doms trust their subs? Do doms tell their subs everything too?
Yes. As the one in control, a dom must trust his sub to tell him when things are going too far, or else someone could get hurt. And just like we are now, after sex, a dom and sub will usually talk about what happened, what they each liked and didn't like.
Then, can I ask you something?
Of course.
He gathered her hair in his hands and tilted her head. Then he assaulted her neck with his hot, lingering kisses. Do you ever just have sex with a woman? I mean, is it always in this context for you?
No and yes. This is who I am, Olivia. It's what I know. It's what I'm good at.
She rotated on his lap and his cock jerked beneath her. God, she wanted him again.
You're still confused.
It wasn't a question so much as it was a statement.
It's hard for someone to get a feel for what this lifestyle is really like, to understand what it's really about, unless they've lived it.
Dean pulled her head forward and poised his lips over hers, but he didn't give her the kiss she craved.
Let me show you, Olivia.
What? She pulled back and met his gaze, which was hot and hopeful. Was he asking her to become his sub? Deep down, Olivia knew she wanted to see him again.
Let me show you what this lifestyle is all about. Let me show you what it truly means to be a sub.
Olivia swallowed hard. Yes, she wanted to see him again, but she wasn't here to join this lifestyle. She was here to write a story. Nothing more, nothing less. Maybe it was time to come clean, to tell him the true reason she was here. But Dean had been so nice to her, so welcome and accommodating. She felt like a jerk for not being honest with him from the start, and she was afraid that if she came clean now, he wouldn't want to see her again.
Olivia.
His tone had switched to his dom voice.
Give me 1 week, baby. If you don't like it, then we can both walk away. No strings attached.
Finally, he kissed her, and her entire body melted into his.
So what's your answer, Olivia? Will you be my sub?
Book 2. Dean winced as he stepped out of the shower and dried his back. He looked in the mirror and grimaced. Olivia really had done a number on his shoulders. She'd actually drawn blood and left scratch marks on him. A slow smile tugged at his lips. Olivia. He hadn't stopped thinking about her since he'd met her last night. His dick got hard every time he thought about her, about what it felt like to be inside of her. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, remembering that night. Oh, he'd had every intention of playing with her until she begged for him. That plan had failed the moment he saw her naked, spread eagle on the bed. Dean lost all control, which isn't something that had ever happened to him. He told her that he was going easy, but that wasn't really the truth. Yeah, he'd been easier on her, than he was on all of his other first-time subs. He'd even let her touch him after he'd told her not to. But the truth was, she'd gotten under his skin the moment he'd laid eyes on her, and all he wanted to do was bury himself in her and stay there for as long as he could. Which is exactly why he convinced her to give him a week to show her the lifestyle. She was so shy and unsure of the whole thing. Well, his mission was to now convince her that this lifestyle, that being his sub, was exactly what she'd been missing in her life. It had been a very long time since he'd had a sub of his own. His job didn't allow much time for that kind of thing, which is why he had trained them in the basics of submission, respect, and trust, and then let them go to find a dom who could give them the time and attention they deserved. Until last night, he really hadn't missed having a submissive. But Olivia made him want one for himself. No, he wanted Olivia. And he'd do whatever was necessary to get her, too. He'd practically begged her to come home with him last night, something he'd never did, begging. But she'd refused. He did, however, convince her to come to his apartment for dinner and drinks tonight. He'd wanted her to come over earlier that morning and spend the whole day with him, but she'd said she had to work, so he'd conceded to dinner. She was due to arrive at his apartment at any moment now. If he had his way, she wouldn't be leaving tonight, though. He tugged on a pair of jeans, splashed on a bit of cologne, and left the bathroom just as the doorbell chimed. Perfect. She was here. He answered the door and smiled when he saw her. She was more beautiful than he'd remembered. Her sea-green eyes and curly brown hair were a nice complement to her bronzed complexion. "Hello, Olivia. Come in," he said, stepping aside so she could enter. He was using his calm, everyday tone of voice for the moment. It was going to take a little extra work to gain her trust. He didn't know why, but he could sense it. "Hi," she said sheepishly, chewing on the inside of her cheek, which caused her lips to pucker and him to wonder how they'd look wrapped around his cock. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning down and kissing her cheek. She was wearing a sleeveless purple sundress that buttoned up the front. It was perfect for what he had planned for her tonight. "Thank you," she smiled. "I'm not too sure what the rules are for something like this." The sound of her voice drew his attention from her mouth. "No rules. We're just two people having drinks and dinner." He smiled again. "Just call me Dean, for now," he added with a wink. "It's common for a dom to do things for his sub. Things that don't require all the rules and submission that sex does. In fact, most doms will date their subs. Wine them, dine them, spoil them." "Oh, okay," she said with a laugh. He could tell the whole thing still confused her. He could also tell that she was nervous. "Make yourself comfortable." He nodded towards the couch and proceeded into the kitchen to get them a drink. Dean returned, handed her a glass, and sat beside her. "You're nervous." "Yes, a little," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "Why?" His voice was soft, soothing, bordering on loving. It shocked him. He cleared his throat and caressed her cheek. "There's no reason to be nervous." Olivia set her glass on the coffee table and looked up at him pointedly. "Last night, you said you wanted a week to show me what this is all about. But, well, I guess I'm not sure why. Why me? I'm sure there are plenty of submissives that don't need to be sold on the lifestyle." "You're right, there are." He set his glass next to hers and put his hand on her knee, which was bare thanks to the form-fitting strapless dress she wore. "In fact, I could have my choice of uncollared subs at that club if I wanted." "Uncollared subs?" He smiled and reminded himself that he couldn't use the lingo without explaining it first. "A submissive who doesn't wear a collar. They're known as uncollared, and it means that they don't have a dom. They're fair game, and usually looking for a new dom to collar them." Oh. Dean could tell her mind was working overtime. She clearly had a question that she was afraid to ask. "I'm here to teach you, Olivia, and you won't learn if you don't ask the questions. So what is it?" Olivia laughed. How do you know I have a question?
Because you have that look on your face, the same one you had last night right before you asked a question.
He caressed her knee and felt her skin erupt in goosebumps beneath his touch. He found himself wanting to lose control again, wanting to rip that dress from her body and sink into her sweet little body again.
Remember what I told you last night. This is all about trust and communication. Tonight, we're going to work on communication. So ask me your question.
She took a deep breath. Are you going to collar me? And there it was. He smiled.
That's not quite how it works. I can't collar you without your permission. A dom will present a submissive with a collar, and then it becomes her choice on whether or not she wants to accept it. If she does, then she becomes his sub, exclusively. In this lifestyle, a collar signifies a commitment, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
That makes sense. But you didn't actually answer my question. He laughed, then picked up his glass and took a long drink. When he set his glass back on the table, he decided to be brutally honest with her. Honesty was something he took very seriously. He always gave it, and he always expected it in return. Turning to face her, he took her hands in his and brought them to his lips, kissing them softly.
I haven't had a sub of my own in a very long time, which is why I've been training them. It gives me what I need without having to commit. But recently, I thought it would be nice to find a new submissive. Then last night, I met you.
That doesn't sound very good. She laughed nervously.
You're misunderstanding me.
It wasn't like him to jumble his words and befuddle his explanation. He took a deep breath.
I can't really answer your question just yet, Olivia. Would I like to collar you? Yeah, more than you know. But you're not even sure this is the lifestyle you want, and until you make that decision, I can't make one about whether to offer you a collar.
Okay, that makes sense. She nodded. Now, will you please answer my original question? Why me? He loved how forward she was, how she didn't give up until she had what she wanted. It turned him on more than it should.
Why not you? Is there something about you I should know? Something you think makes you unworthy?
Olivia looked down. Dean put his finger under her chin and tilted her head up so she had to look at him.
You can trust me, Olivia. Talk to me.
She licked her lips and he mentally groaned. He wanted nothing more than to shift into dom mode and take her right there on the couch. My last boyfriend told me that.
He told you what?
Dean encouraged. He told me that sex with me was boring, and that it was hard to get off with me. She whispered so quietly he had to lean closer to hear her. Dean's eyes narrowed and his nostrils flared. What kind of fucking douchebag would say that to a woman, especially a woman as sexy as Olivia? He took a calming breath.
Do you believe that? Do you think you're boring in bed?
She shrugged. I don't know. I've never been told anything different. Telling her that she was fantastic in bed and that he'd come harder last night than he ever had in his life wouldn't do any good. He had to show her. Clearing his throat, he switched into his deep, commanding voice.
On your knees, Olivia.
Without a word, she got off the couch, went to her knees, and presented for him just like he'd shown her last night. His cock was hard instantly. It was always arousing to see a woman in that position, but there was something about seeing this woman like that. It did funny things to him, things he liked but couldn't explain. He was so tempted to bring her to her feet, carry her to his bed, and fuck her senseless. But he couldn't do that. He had to teach her how to be a submissive, and more importantly, he had to prove to her that she wasn't boring. Dean grabbed his glass from the table and went to the kitchen to refill it. Being in her presence when she was presented for him was too much. He just needed a few minutes to regain his control, which seemed to evaporate the second he was around her. His hand shook as he poured more wine into his glass. Good Lord, what the hell was wrong with him? He drained his glass in one sip and then refilled it again. This time, he sipped it slowly. When he felt a little calmer, he returned to the living room and stood in front of Olivia. His cock was so hard it strained painfully against his zipper. Slowly he unzipped his jeans and freed his cock, needing the freedom from the confines of his clothes. "I want you, Olivia. I want to tie you up and have my way with you." Her cheeks turned a gorgeous shade of pink, and he knew her ass would turn the same color when he spanked her. He gripped the length of his cock and started to stroke it. The thought of his hand on her bare made him that much hornier. Fuck. He wanted to come inside her so bad. "I want you too, sir." Whoa. She was more confident than she'd been last night. That turned him on even more. God, he felt like a teenager who knew he was going to be laid for the first time. "Just being near you makes my dick hard," he said, fighting to keep his voice calm even as he lowered his pants to his ankles and sat on the couch. He sat back, his arms extended along the back of the couch, and tried to decide if he wanted her to suck his cock or just put her over his lap and spank her. He was leaning toward the spanking because he knew the moment her mouth was on him, he'd lose control again. "Get up here and sit beside me." He patted the couch. Olivia got up and did as he asked. Her gaze darted to his erect cock and then back to his face. He smiled at her and she blushed. "Do you like my cock, Olivia? Do you like looking at it?" "Yes, sir." "Would you like to touch it?" She licked her lips. "Yes, sir." Dean took her hand and placed it on his cock. Her delicate fingers closed around his shaft and she stroked him. His head fell back against the couch and he groaned. "Shit, that feels good. Keep doing exactly what you're doing." He couldn't take his eyes off of her hand. "Now use your other hand to fold down the top of your dress. I want to see your tits." "Yes, Master Dean." His cock jerked at the sound of her sweet voice calling him master. "Calm down, Dean. You can't rush it again. You have to show her who's in charge, and you can't do that if you lose control." She did as he said, and her breasts were now visible to him. He reached over and took a nipple into each hand, twisting, turning, and pinching until they were hard, tight, reddened peaks. Olivia moaned softly, and he knew that his plans to prolong their encounter were once again shot. "Come here," he said, claiming her lips in a kiss that had him fighting for breath and self-control. Her hand continued to run up and down the length of his shaft. Shit, it wasn't supposed to be like this. He was the master. He was a dom, and she was his submissive. She wasn't supposed to have the power to rob him of his self-control with a single kiss. "Lift your dress up around your waist and lay face down across my lap," he said, and watched as she bunched her dress around her midsection. "Fuck." The word escaped him before he could stop it. She was wearing thongs. Good God, he wanted to skip the spanking and just fuck her so hard right now. "Put your arms over your head and leave them there." "Yes, sir," she said, wiggling her ass as she moved her arms. His dick throbbed painfully. "If I hurt you, I want you to tell me. You have permission to speak freely, okay?" "Okay, sir." "You are so beautiful, Olivia." He smoothed his hands over the globes of her ass, running his fingers along the length of her crack before pulling back and smacking her. She yelped, her flesh turning a rosy shade of pink. He caressed the spot he'd just slapped, worried he might have hurt her and afraid she wouldn't speak up even though he'd told her to. "You okay?" "Yes, sir." She looked over her shoulder at him, and he knew she was telling the truth. He could see it in her eyes, the excitement, the desire, and the wanton urge for more. She began to turn back so that her face was buried in the couch cushion again. "No," he said. "Look at me." Olivia met his gaze, and he held it as his hand made contact with her ass again. In what could only be considered a show of defiance, she continued to hold his gaze, and she didn't make a sound as he placed a third and then a fourth slap to her ass. Her defiance should have angered him. It should have provoked him to punish her, but he found it arousing. Hell, everything about this woman was arousing. He slipped a hand between her legs, dipping a finger into her pussy.
"You're wet, Olivia. I think you might like having your ass spanked."
Dean worked his finger in and out of her, wetting his finger with her juices and drawing back, circling her rear entrance. "Yes, I do. I like it." Her breathing was coming harder, faster. He cracked her across the ass again, hard enough it stung his palm. She screamed. "I mean, yes, I do. I like it, sir."
"Good girl,"
he groaned, sliding his finger into her pussy again, rewarding her for addressing him correctly. She moaned and he closed his eyes, inhaling deeply through his mouth. It was a relaxation technique that used to work for him, but in this situation with Olivia, it did nothing to help. When his finger was good and wet again, he slipped it into her tight little asshole. She groaned his name and he was finished. He couldn't take any more. If he didn't get inside of her soon, he was going to die of a coronary.
"Get up,"
he said. Olivia got up and her dress fell from her body and pooled at her feet. Dean inhaled sharply as he fumbled in his pocket for a condom. He quickly disposed of his jeans and sheathed himself.
"Come here, baby."
He stood and positioned her so she was kneeling on the couch, holding onto the back of it. He knelt behind her and impaled her with his cock. She was so wet, it was easy to slide inside of her. His neck arched and his eyes rolled into the back of his head.
"Holy fucking hell. You feel so damn good."
Dean adjusted his hold on her waist and thrust into her hard and fast. "Yeah," she whimpered. "Ah, God, you're so hard, Dean." Motherfucker. Why did she have to say shit like that to him? He leaned over her so that his mouth was near her ear.
"That's because of you, Olivia. You made me this hard. You made me want to stay inside of you forever."
"Oh, God," she moaned. He nipped at her earlobe.
"Tell me what you like, baby. Tell me what you want."
"Touch me," she whispered. "Rub my clit, please." Her voice was low and needy. Dean reached around and found her clit. He placed 2 fingers on it and rubbed it in a circular motion, pressing it just enough to make her writhe against his hand and push her ass back against his cock.
"Like that?"
It was so hot that she talked to him like that. "Yes," she cried. "God, yes. Feels so good." His balls tightened and his spine tingled. Son of a bitch, he was ready to come. He slowed his pace just enough so that he wouldn't blow his wad until she did.
"Shit, Olivia. You make me lose control. I love being inside of you."
"Dean?" His voice fell from her lips, as more of a plea than an actual word.
"You're not boring."
He shoved into her hard a few times.
"And I have no problem getting off with you."
A few more hard thrusts that made her scream.
"Do you feel it, Olivia? Do you feel me getting harder inside of you? I'm going to come."
She panted and shook her head. "Yeah, me too." He rubbed her clit faster until he felt her tighten painfully around his cock. Then he felt her hot release and he let himself go, ramming his dick all the way into her, and then jerking once he came so hard he went cross-eyed. "Dean?" She actually screamed his name, which made him wish he hadn't come so soon, so that he could stay buried in her warm, wet pussy. Dean showered her shoulders with kisses and she shuddered.
"Please don't ever think that you're boring, or that you can't get a man off."
He eased out of her and she turned to sit. Kneeling in front of her, he said,
"I didn't think I could come any harder than I had last night, and then you made me come harder just now. God, baby, you are."
Dean crushed his mouth to hers and kissed her breathless.
"Get dressed. We're going to the club."
There was one more lesson he wanted to teach her tonight. Olivia found herself inside of Allegiant again. Dean sat at the same table, and in the same chair that he'd been in the last night when she first met him. Only this time, there were two other doms present. One was alone, and the other had a sub sitting on the floor at his feet, which is where Olivia sat too, at Dean's feet. He explained it was normal, but it kind of made her feel insignificant. She listened as Dean and the other two doms talked of work and people she didn't know. Master Todd's sub, Maya, was nice, and trying to make conversation with Olivia. "So, Master Dean is training you, huh?" Maya said. "Yes. You're lucky. Master Dean is very caring. He's a good dom." A feeling of dread settled in Olivia's stomach. "Did he train you too?" Maya smiled and nodded. Olivia felt nauseous. She knew Dean had trained subs, but to actually sit and talk to one of them? It was weird. She hated knowing that Dean had been with other women. It made her feel jealous as hell. The sound of Master Steve's voice snapped her out of her thoughts.
"So, Dean, I see you've got a new sub in training." "Yes."
Dean reached down and touched Olivia's shoulder.
"Olivia's learning very quickly. She's a good student, and even better submissive."
She couldn't help but smile at his compliment.
"Well, when she's out of training, I'm definitely interested."
Master Steve looked at Olivia and smiled. She shuddered. He was not an attractive man, and the thought of his hands on her made her skin crawl.
"Olivia, up,"
Dean said. She obediently got to her feet. He patted his lap, and she sat. His arm wrapped protectively around her waist.
"When I'm done training you, would you like Master Steve to be your dom?"
She was stunned. What kind of question was that? And why was Dean putting her on the spot like this? She didn't know what to say. Better yet, she didn't know what was appropriate.
"It's okay, Olivia. Be honest."
"No," she said, shaking her head. Dean smiled and then pulled her mouth down to his lips. She may not know much about this lifestyle, but she knew enough to know that Dean was making a claim on her, showing Steve that he had no rights to Olivia whatsoever. She heard Master Steve's chair scrape along the floor, and then his footsteps as he walked away. "I'm sorry if I was rude, sir," she mumbled against his lips.
"Don't be. I wouldn't have allowed you to become his submissive anyway. He has a reputation for not being very nice."
He nipped erotically at her bottom lip. She closed her eyes and leaned into him.
"Straddle me, baby. It's time for another lesson."
Olivia was learning to love his lessons. She adjusted and straddled him as he asked. Then, like a good submissive, she waited for his next set of instructions. Keeping his gaze locked with hers, he reached for his zipper and slowly pulled it down.
"Trust,"
he said. She looked down at his hard cock, and her breath caught. He was magnificent, and the thought of their week coming to an end choked her up.
"Look behind me at the couple in the corner. Tell me what you see."
Olivia looked to the corner. There's a dom sitting in the chair. His sub is riding him, and she paused, unable to believe what she saw.
"And what?"
Dean pressed, as he took a condom from his pocket and put it on. She swallowed hard. And there's another man coming up behind the woman. Her dom is nodding his head and spreading her ass cheeks. The man is entering her. She's... Olivia felt herself blushing. She's letting both of those men have sex with her. Dean put his hand on the back of her head and once again lowered her mouth to his.
"It's common around here for a dom to share his submissive with another man."
Is that what you're planning to do right now, sir? The thought terrified her. She'd never had anal sex, nor did she want to. Even the thought of having sex right here for everyone to see was terrifying enough, without the worry of another man trying to violate her.
"Is that what you want, Olivia? Do you want another man to be inside of you while I am?
No, sir. There was no hesitation in her voice. This was one thing she was certain of. Dean lifted her and set her down on his erection. She tensed. Having sex in public wasn't much better, in her opinion.
Trust me, baby,
he whispered. Inch by inch she impaled herself on his cock, and they moaned simultaneously. Olivia dropped her forehead to his shoulder, luxuriating in the feel of him filling her, stretching her, and not wanting anyone to see her having sex.
Keep your eyes on me, Olivia. You don't have to look at anyone or anything but me.
She lifted her head and forced her eyes open. Her eyes locked with his, and he slowly moved beneath her.
That's it, baby. It's just you and me right now.
His voice was still commanding, but it was low, just above a whisper, and it racked over her senses like a cool breeze.
Go as slow or as fast as you want.
Her delicate hand cupped his face, and her lips were on his. Dean, she whispered into his mouth as her hips rotated on him. She couldn't believe she was having sex in the middle of a club like this. Behind her, she heard Master Todd moan. Part of her was curious as to why. Was he watching them? As if he could read her mind, Dean said,
"His sub is giving him a blowjob. He was turned on watching you ride me."
She thought she'd be embarrassed or offended by someone watching her, but it turned her on. It was a rush to know a man was aroused by simply watching her. Olivia increased her pace, needing to feel more of him. Their gazes were still locked, and it was one of the most intense things she'd ever experienced. To have sex while maintaining eye contact? Honestly, it felt like they were making love.
"Yeah, baby. That's it. Ride my cock, Olivia. Make it feel good."
His voice had gone back to his calm, everyday voice, which startled her for a moment now that she knew the difference. What was it about this man that had her acting this way? Why was she allowing him to convince her to do these things? This wasn't like her at all. He grabbed her hips and held her still, his cock buried all the way in her pussy, which was throbbing and pulsating around him. "Please, sir, I need to move. I'm so close."
"Shh. Don't move. And whatever you do or hear, do not take your eyes off me, okay?"
She nodded, afraid of what was happening.
"Looking for a third?"
said a man from behind her. Olivia's eyes widened as she realized why this man was here, and what he wanted. She kept her gaze locked on Dean. His eyes narrowed, and he wrapped his arms protectively around her back, his one hand sliding down to cup her ass. That calmed her a little, but it was his words that really soothed her.
"Not her, Jeff. She's mine."
Those two little words, "she's mine," swirled in her brain. She liked the sound of that, of being Dean's, not just for a week, but a lot longer.
"Sorry,"
Jeff said, and backed away. Dean met her gaze and smiled. She whispered thank you, and he kissed her hard on the mouth as he released his hold on her.
"You can trust me, Olivia. Always."
"I know," she whispered. She quickly found a steady rhythm that had both of them moaning, groping, nipping, and kissing as they climaxed. Since the first time she'd been with Dean last night, she'd had some pretty fantastic orgasms, but none of them compared to this one. She didn't know why, but to her it felt more like they'd made love rather than had sex. Looking into a man's eyes while she climaxed was uncomfortable at first, but Dean made it easy on her. He made her feel safe, and for that, she was able to let her inhibitions go when she was with him. It was glorious.
"Look around now, Olivia. Tell me what you see that turns you on."
She drew a shaky breath and did as he instructed. She saw a man standing not too far behind them. He was watching them intently as he masturbated. All around them, people were having sex in various positions. She hadn't really noticed just how much sex was happening up until right now. She hadn't really allowed herself to look until now. You, sir, she said, bringing her gaze back to his. You turned me on.
Yeah, it was mildly arousing to watch other couples have sex, but ultimately, it was the man she was with that did it for her. What?
You're the only man in this place that turns me on, sir. She worked her hips around, sliding easily up and down on him. He felt incredible.
You're going to be the death of me,
he murmured as he claimed her lips in the same way he claimed her body. Moments later, Olivia came, and Dean did too. His whole body shook with the force of his orgasm. His cock jerked uncontrollably inside of her as she continued to squeeze him, milking every last drop of cum from him. He dropped his forehead to her shoulder. She stroked the hair at the nape of his neck and planted soft kisses on his head. It was a gentle, loving gesture that had her mind racing with possibilities.
Are you okay, baby?
His voice was soft and tender, much like the kisses he was placing all over her shoulders and neck. Yes, sir. He lifted his head and once again looked into her eyes.
You're absolutely amazing. You know that?
His compliment made her blush. Thank you, sir. He smiled.
What did you learn tonight?
That I can trust you, sir. His smile grew bigger.
Is that all?
She stared at him, unsure of what else she was supposed to say. When he saw her uncertainty, he said,
Do you still think you're boring? Or that you can't get a man off in bed?
Her breath caught. She no longer had any doubts about her abilities to get him off, but she wasn't so sure she could get anyone else off, and she hated her ex for putting these doubts in her mind. Before him, she'd been a very confident woman. Dean framed her face with his hands and stroked her cheeks with his thumbs.
Olivia, baby, I don't think you fully realize what happened here tonight.
No, I don't, sir.
Master Todd got hard watching you take my cock. Master Jeff wanted you, and when I told him no, he masturbated to the idea of you, to the thought of being with you. Even Master Steve was watching from the bar. He made it clear that he wants you when your training is over.
Hearing Dean talk about her training ending made her sad. The end of her training meant the end of them, and that was something she didn't want to think about. In fact, whenever she did think about it, she began to hope more and more that he would decide that he wanted to be her dom.
So, you see, you are an attractive woman, physically and sexually. You made several men hard, especially me. He chuckled, and then turned serious. Come home with me tonight, Olivia.
He traced her lips with his tongue before kissing her.
Let me show you what it's like to spend an entire night with a dom, with me.
She debated his offer for a moment. Go home alone to a cold, empty bed, or go home with Dean and spend the night in his arms. That was a no-brainer. But before she could answer, he continued,
I want to spend the whole night with you, baby. I want to kiss you, explore your body, make you come repeatedly.
I'd like that very much, sir.
So you'll stay the whole night?
She laughed. Yes, sir, the whole night. Dean grinned.
What do you say we get out of here? Right now, then.
Olivia nodded her agreement. Then she got off his lap and adjusted her dress. Dean excused himself to the bathroom to clean himself up. She plopped down on his chair and waited. It was only then that she realized both Master Todd and Maya were looking at her. Her face flushed red with embarrassment, and she wished Dean were here right now.
That's the first time he's ever done that, you know,
Master Todd said. Done what? She asked. Then she wondered if she was supposed to address him as Sir, too.
Had sex out here in the open room. He normally takes his trainees into the dungeon to train them.
Master Todd took a sip of his whiskey and smiled.
He's also never gone head-to-head with another dom like he did with Master Steve.
Oh? Olivia had no idea what to make of all of that information, or why Master Todd had chosen to tell her all of that. Well, I don't know anything about how Master Dean trained his other submissives, but he's been very kind to me. Master Todd continued to smile.
Maya, love, didn't Master Dean train you?
Yes, sir, Maya said.
Maybe when you're done training, you two can trade notes.
Master Todd laughed. Maya gave Olivia an apologetic smile. Yeah, right. The last thing Olivia was going to do was trade stories about Dean and Maya, a woman she knew nothing about.
Olivia, is that you?
Olivia's heart stopped at the sound of that voice. Slowly she stood and looked up at Brandon. What are you doing here? She asked, grabbing his elbow and dragging him away from Maya and Master Todd. This was a conversation they didn't need to hear.
Tracy didn't think you'd have the guts to go through with the research needed for this story, so she sent me in as backup.
Brandon smiled. Olivia felt her stomach flop and her heart sink, as if it wasn't bad enough that her boss didn't believe in her. Tracy had to go and send the one person in that entire office that Olivia despised. Brandon was a self-centered, arrogant, misogynistic prick. Well, you can go back and tell Tracy I'm doing just fine, and that I don't need backup. Brandon crossed his arms over his chest.
Are you? Because to me, it looks like you're uncomfortable here. You had two perfect subjects right in front of you, and you were barely talking to them. That doesn't seem like you're doing fine to me.
She scowled. Damn it, Brandon. I don't need you looking over my shoulder on this. I'm doing what's necessary to get the story, okay? Now leave it alone.
And what exactly are you doing? He pressed.
That's none of your business. She clenched her hands into fists and glared at him.
It is when you botch this story, and I have to pick up the pieces. So tell me, what have you got so far, so that I know how much work I have to do?
The urge to slap him was overwhelming. Look, Brandon, not that it's any of your business, but I have a very trustworthy source, okay? In fact, he'll be here any second, and if you're hanging around, it will blow things, for obvious reasons. He wants to remain anonymous. Brandon eyed her suspiciously.
You're really doing this? You're going to actually get the inside scoop into this freakish lifestyle and write the article Tracy wants?
His voice was laced with disbelief. Yes?
Olivia, what the hell is going on here? Who is this guy? And what article is he talking about?
Dean's voice paralyzed her with fear. Oh, shit. She slowly turned and looked at him, and from the look on his face, she guessed he'd heard a lot more than she'd hoped he had. His eyes were dark with fear and pain. Pain she caused. I can explain, she said lamely. Book 3. Olivia presented for Dean, her heart thundering in her chest and ears so loud she could barely hear anything over the sound of her own heartbeat. He demanded that she accompany him to his dungeon room after he'd overheard Brandon talking about the article. She could have used her safe word, and she almost had, but she desperately wanted a chance to explain, to make Dean understand. So she'd willingly followed him to the room, and now she kneeled before him, waiting. To an outsider, it would appear as though she were being patient, waiting for her master to give her an order. But the truth was, she wasn't patient. She was dying on the inside. They'd been in here for close to 5 minutes, and Dean hadn't said a word yet. He just walked back and forth in front of her. Every few moments he would sigh. Then he stopped pacing.
Look at me, Olivia.
Slowly she lifted her head, ashamed that she had tears streaming down her face. Olivia wanted to appear strong, but she wasn't. She was falling apart. His eyes were dark, brooding, and full of painful anger. Olivia nervously licked her lips. Why wasn't he saying anything?
Who are you? And I want the truth this time.
He crossed his arms over his chest. She longed to have them wrapped around her, to feel his strong, comforting embrace. He seemed so cold compared to how he just was an hour ago. What she wouldn't give to go back and do things differently.
Answer me, damn it.
His booming voice startled her. My name is really Olivia, sir, and I'm a journalist for Women's Life and World Magazine. Everything I told you about my past, about my ex and my sexual history is all true. I swear it, sir. Her lips trembled and her voice quivered. She didn't know what she'd do if he didn't believe her. How could she ever prove it to him?
And what's the truth about why you're here?
She swallowed hard. There was no more lying. My boss sent me here to get the inside story about this lifestyle, sir. Dean took a deep breath and then turned his back on her. She didn't think it was possible for her heart to hurt any more, but in that moment it did. It felt like it shattered in her chest, and the ragged pieces were coursing through her veins, cutting her even deeper. Without turning around, Dean lowered his head and said,
And what was I, Olivia?
He spun around on her.
Huh? What the fuck was I to you? Just a means to an end?
No. She shook her head as tears coursed freely down her face. No, Master Dean. That's not it at all. I never expected to meet you, but I did, and...
And what? You saw an opportunity to further your career?
He ran a hand through his hair.
Shit.
That's not how it was, sir. She was crying so hard now, her words were more incoherent sobs than actual words. Dean stood in front of her, looking down at her with pure disgust and hatred. It was unbearable to see him looking at her like that.
There were only two things you had to do, Olivia. Trust me and communicate with me. And you,
he pointed to her face.
You didn't do either one of them.
Fuck! He laced his hands on top of his head and looked up at the ceiling. She had no idea what to say. He was right. All he'd asked for was trust, and for her to talk to him. She hadn't done either, and now that she looked back on it, she couldn't even remember why she'd made the choice to lie to him. But she had, and it was the worst decision she'd ever made.
Why, Olivia? Why did you lie to me?
I don't know, sir, she whispered, and then a little louder added, I wanted to. I had every intention of telling you the truth the first night. But then you asked me to go to your room, and I was afraid. Olivia paused to take a deep breath. I was afraid that you wouldn't want to be with me.
That's where you were wrong.
He took a few steps back.
Get up.
Olivia stood, thankful for the reprieve from kneeling, but she had a feeling that what was about to happen was going to be so much worse than being forced to kneel for a longer period of time. Dean closed the gap between them and took her face into his hands. Then he did something she didn't expect. He kissed her. It started hard and fast, laced with despair, and then it slowed to a soft, passionate, all-consuming burn. She knew without him saying it that it was a kiss goodbye. More tears flowed down her cheeks. Dean released her lips and wiped her tears with his thumbs. Then he rested his forehead to hers, allowing her eyes to close momentarily. What he said next crushed her.
I cared about you, Olivia. A lot. In fact, I was going to collar you tonight. But now...
He dropped his hands from her face and stepped back.
Well, now I can't. You've broken my trust, and that's something I just can't forgive.
She noticed he was no longer using his dominant voice. His words stung. He had wanted to collar her, to make her his submissive. Something he'd openly admitted he hadn't done in a long time. And now he could barely stand the sight of her. So that was it? It was really over. Just like that. It hurt so bad she didn't know if she could breathe, let alone walk out of this room, this club, and his life forever. It wasn't fair. Dean, please. Just give me another chance. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she pleaded.
So am I.
He shook his head and once again turned away from her.
Just go, Olivia.
What? She prayed to God that she'd misheard him, but her gut told her she hadn't.
I said go.
He faced her.
I'm no longer capable of training you. So it's best you just leave, right now.
Oh, God! She sobbed and clutched her hands over her chest. No, this could not be happening. It just couldn't. But sure enough, Dean gathered her coat and handed it to her. She swallowed the sob that threatened to erupt. Part of her wanted to drop to her knees and beg him not to do this, but she knew that wouldn't do any good, so she took her coat and slipped it on. I really am sorry, Dean.
Me too.
Then he walked further into the room and sat on the leather couch in the corner. Olivia wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders, and walked out of the room and the club with her head held high. As she passed the bar, she noticed Master Steve eyeing her. That man made her skin crawl. Even though Dean was no longer her master, she still wouldn't dream of letting Steve anywhere near her. Hell, she had no intentions of coming anywhere near this club ever again. This part of her life was over. When Olivia left the room, Dean turned and looked at her retreating back. Tears pooled in his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time he wanted to cry over a woman, but Olivia had cut him deep. Dean had truly believed that she was different, that she wasn't like other women, and that she was genuinely interested in him and this lifestyle. But no, she'd only been using him so she could write an article for her job. Letting her go had been hard, but it had been even harder to hear the truth. When he'd overheard her talking to that man, he desperately wanted to believe he'd heard wrong, that because he'd come in during the middle of a conversation, that he'd taken it out of context. Unfortunately, he hadn't. Olivia had lied to him. She used him in one of the worst ways possible. And that damn article, what would she say in it? Would she portray the lifestyle favorably, or would she misrepresent it like so many others? Was she going to use his name? He stood and paced. How was all of this going to affect his reputation here at the club? And as a dom? He'd forever be known as the dom who got played by his sub. He needed a drink. Dean left his dungeon room and went back out into the main room. He sat at the end of the bar in the corner and ordered a double shot of top-shelf whiskey.
Keep it full,
he said to the bartender, and then he proceeded to get drunk. He had no intentions of going home. He'd just pass out in his dungeon room, where the pillows and blankets still smelled like Olivia. At 6:00 a.m., Olivia's alarm went off. She was already awake. In fact, she'd barely slept since Dean kicked her out of his life. She'd spent all weekend locked up in her apartment, binging on ice cream, watching romantic comedies, and crying until her eyes hurt. It was her standard operating procedure after a breakup, and normally, after a weekend of intense grieving, she'd be good enough to face the world. But not this time. Every single time she closed her eyes, she saw Dean's face. In the middle of the night, when everything was dead silent, she could hear his voice and feel his hands on her. It was pure torture. She missed him so much, it hurt to function. When they were together, she hadn't realized it, but now that he'd been torn from her life, she knew just how much she cared for him. It was crazy, but she was in love with Dean. Olivia forced herself out of bed even though she had no intentions of going to work. Grabbing her cell phone, she dialed Tracy. As always, Tracy was wide awake and chipper. Olivia often wondered if that woman ever stopped working. "Hi, Tracy. Sorry to call you so early, but I need to take the week off." "What? Why on earth would you need an entire week off? Do I need to remind you that you have an article due next week, or should I just have Brandon write it? Damn it, I knew I should have just— Tracy!" Olivia interrupted her tirade. "I'm well aware of my deadline, and no, you don't need Brandon to write the story. In fact, the story is the reason I need the week off." Lying to Tracy never paid off, but Olivia knew she couldn't tell Tracy the truth this time. so she would just bend the truth a little.
What does that mean?
I've managed to get invited to a week-long submissive training course. In order to keep up the facade I've created, I need to be there the entire week. When Tracy remained silent, Olivia continued. This is what you wanted, isn't it? An in-depth insider perspective on this lifestyle? Well, you're not going to get it any more in-depth than this. This had better be the best thing you've ever written in your entire life, or you're fired. Then Tracy abruptly hung up. Olivia threw her phone across the floor with an aggravated scream. That was just wonderful. Not only had she been dumped, but now her job was on the line. How was she supposed to write this article when all she could focus on was the pain and heartache? Then an idea struck her. She raced into the living room and grabbed her laptop. Carrying it into the kitchen, she sat it on the table and prepared herself a cup of coffee with a few extra sugars. After no sleep all weekend, she was going to need the caffeine to give her the boost to finish this article. She knew if she didn't write it now, it wouldn't have the emotional punch she was hoping to achieve. Once she had her coffee, she tucked her laptop under her arm and retreated back to her bedroom. She had an article to write. It had been almost 2 weeks since Dean released Olivia. He missed her like crazy, and had even thought about calling her a few times. But each time he picked up the phone, he'd hang up before he finished dialing her number. There was just no way he could forgive her for what she'd done. Being a dom and living this lifestyle, it's who he was, and he couldn't change that. He'd been very clear in his expectations of her. Why couldn't she just follow the rules? Then they'd still be together. She'd be wearing his collar, and he'd be spending every night pleasuring her. Instead, he was jogging alone, in the drizzling rain, hoping that the pain in his chest would subside just a little, just enough so that he could take a deep breath without hurting. He'd gone to the club every single night on the slight possibility that Olivia might be there looking for him. She wasn't. She hadn't tried to call either. Of course he had told her to go, to get out of his life. Could he really blame her for not calling? Dean slowed to a walk as he came into town. Old man Gary was on the corner with his little newsstand and concessions. Dean stopped and bought a bottle of water, which he took a long drink of.
How's it going today, Gary? Could be better and could be worse.
Gary laughed.
Why are you out here in this rain? I needed to work off some excess energy.
More like pain, anger, and sexual frustration. To him, all of those emotions were just blending together to make him a miserable fucker.
Thanks for the water. Have a good day.
Dean waved and turned to jog away when something caught his eye. It was a Woman's Life and World magazine. He'd never paid attention to that specific magazine before, but today, Olivia's beautiful face was on the cover with a headline that read, "How My Master Changed My Life. A Submissive Story." Dean plucked it from the rack and flipped it open until he came to the article. Then he stood there and read it. To most, BDSM is a freakish lifestyle, one that revolves around kinky sexual acts, multiple partners, and disrespect to women. Well, I'm here to tell you that most people are wrong. Recently, I had the pleasure of becoming a submissive to a wonderful, caring, and considerate master. Even though our time together was brief, he opened my eyes to a whole new world, a world that is built on trust, communication, mutual respect, and most importantly, love. For the short time that I was with my master, I felt more secure and loved than I'd ever felt in my entire life. This is my story, from the humble beginning to the bittersweet ending. It was a Friday night, and I was sent to Allegiant, a BDSM club on the outskirts of town. The article continued for a full 3 pages, but Dean didn't need to read any more. He knew how it would end, and he was determined to rewrite the ending to better suit him. He pulled a bill from his pocket, handed it to Gary, and then ran home as fast as he could, with the magazine clutched firmly in his hands. Olivia fumbled to get her ringing cell phone from her purse. It was Tracy. Great. What did she want? Hello?
Thanks to your article, the magazine is selling at a new record pace. It's been on shelves for less than 12 hours, and we've already sold over 1 million copies. You're brilliant, Olivia. Simply brilliant. I want to do another feature, this time from a dom's perspective. So, I want you to call your master and— No! Olivia interrupted.
I'm sorry, Tracy, but I can't do that. She wasn't about to tell her why, so she said, for personal and professional reasons, he wants to stay anonymous.
I don't care if he doesn't want to do it. Then find another one who will. Surely your master has other master friends, right?
Tracy laughed at her own joke. Olivia didn't find it funny. Get Brandon to do it. Then Olivia hung up. Because of Tracy and because of this stupid job, Olivia's life had been turned upside down. There was no way Tracy or this magazine was going to get any more of Olivia's time or life. She didn't care if she got fired over it. Tracy needed to realize that she couldn't mess with people's lives just so she could sell a few million magazines. Frustrated, Olivia decided to go to the gym and renew her membership. She needed something to help her pass the time. She grabbed her purse, flung the strap over her shoulder, opened the front door, and then stopped cold.
Hello, Olivia.
Dean. As much as she didn't want to be, she knew she had to be dreaming. She blinked her eyes several times. He was still right there, standing in her doorway. What are you doing here?
I saw your article.
He held up the magazine.
I was hoping we could talk for a minute.
She sighed. I was very careful to keep your identity a secret, and everything I said was the truth. I didn't take any creative license with this article. Even with the description of the club is accurate. He smiled, and a little piece of her came back to life. How she'd missed seeing that smile.
Yes, I know. It's not the facts of the article I want to talk about.
It's not?
No.
Then what do you want to talk about?
She was expecting him to just disappear at any moment, that she would wake up and realize this really was all a dream. What you said in here?
He held up the magazine again.
About your experiences with me and how you felt? Did you mean it?
Her jaw dropped. Had he really come here to ask if she meant what she'd written? She searched her mind for some of the things she had put in that article. More secure and loved than I've ever felt before. My master opened my eyes to what a real relationship is supposed to feel like. He made me feel things I didn't know I could feel. Through his lessons and whispered words, I discovered who I truly was. Olivia cleared her throat. Yes, I meant them.
That's all I needed to hear.
Dean pushed his way into her apartment. He kicked the door closed behind him, and then took her face into his hands. His mouth slanted over hers, and he kissed her. Olivia's eyes fluttered closed. If this was just another dream, then so be it. But for right now, she needed this. She needed to feel his lips on hers, his tongue exploring her mouth, his strong arms wrapping around her and holding her tightly to his body. Moaning softly, she leaned into his embrace, wanting to stay there forever. He pulled away and she groaned in protest.
I'm sorry, Olivia,
he whispered. Her eyes snapped open. What? Why on earth was he apologizing to her? He hadn't done anything wrong.
That night, when I found out about the article, I overreacted. I'm so sorry for that. It's just,
he sighed.
As a dom, I'm not used to people disobeying me, and I'm really not used to anyone lying to me, especially one of my subs. I didn't know how to handle it.
I never should have lied to you, Dean. You have no idea how sorry I am, or how much I regret it. Shh. He silenced her with a toe-curling kiss that left her gasping for breath. She expected him to pull away again, to leave her wanting more, but he didn't. In fact, he grabbed her ass with both of his hands and lifted her. Olivia wrapped her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck.
I missed you, Olivia.
Tears filled her eyes. I've missed you too, she whispered, taking his lips in a hard kiss. She prayed that this was really happening, that after these past few weeks, Dean had truly forgiven her. She wanted that more than anything. Dean carried her into the living room and sat on the couch, bringing her down on his lap.
I need you, Olivia.
He yanked her shirt off over her head and then unhooked her bra.
I need you so bad.
Her heart raced and her mind buzzed with his words. He needed her. She needed him, too, and wouldn't deny him no matter what. She reached for his shirt and unbuttoned it until his glorious chest was exposed. Her fingers trembled as she ran them across his pecs and down his chest. It wasn't until she reached his jeans that she realized he wasn't taking control like she was used to. In fact, he was sitting back and letting her take charge. She wasn't used to it and found it strange. Hesitating, she looked into his eyes.
Don't stop,
he said, rubbing his hands up and down her back, eliciting a shudder from her. Still, she hesitated, unsure of what was acceptable and expected. The last thing she wanted to do was upset him and cause him to leave. Should I present or something? He chuckled softly.
No, not this time, Olivia. This time, it's just you and me, man and woman, not dom and sub, okay?
Okay. She nodded.
Good.
Dean smiled.
Now, what would you like to do to me?
He heard her breath hitch and his smile grew. I want to feel you inside of me. Her hands were working at his zipper, tugging it down. His cock jerked at her words. He wasn't used to hearing her talk like that, and he was more than happy to take the credit for it. After all, it was because of him that she'd come out of her shell and explored her sexuality. Dean reached into his pocket, retrieved a condom, and then lifted his ass off the couch just enough to pull his jeans down over his hips.
I think I can help you with that.
Let me, she said, taking the condom from him. Then she got off his lap and kneeled on the floor in front of him. She tucked the condom wrapper between her teeth, removed his shoes, and then finished taking off his pants. Tearing the foil packet, she looked up at him with a devious smile. She lowered her head and took him into her mouth. Dean inhaled sharply and let his head fall back against the couch.
Shit,
he breathed out as Olivia dragged her mouth up his length and back down again. Her mouth was like heaven. He gathered her hair in his hands and held it back so that he could watch her suck his dick. It was such an erotic sight.
Baby.
He lifted his hips and thrust his cock deeper into her mouth.
That feels so damn good.
Releasing him, she placed a kiss on the very tip of his cock, before rolling the condom down his length. Then she stood and removed her own pants.
You are so beautiful,
he said, reaching for her. He didn't think it was possible to forget how gorgeous she was, but he had, and now seeing her standing before him naked and eager, it was almost too much to bear. His balls were so tight, begging for release. His cock throbbed for relief.
Come here.
Olivia straddled him once more and slowly slid down on his length, taking all of him inside of her. She arched her back, tilted her head back, and closed her eyes. Dean held her waist as she eased down on him. Feeling her like this again was like a jolt of white-hot electricity through his body. She was so warm and inviting, and he knew he never wanted to be anywhere else. And Lord knows he'd tried. He'd gotten several tempting offers from other subs these past 2 weeks, and he considered them until he got them to his dungeon room, and then he'd send them away. The only woman he wanted was this one. She was the only one who could bring him to life, make him want more than just a sexual relationship, and make him so fucking hard his eyes crossed and he felt like he would spontaneously combust. There was no denying it. Olivia was the only woman for him, now and forever. She took his face into her hands, her fingernails scratching at his cheeks, and she kissed him as she rocked on him. Her moans started quickly and escalated the more she rode him. At this rate, he was going to come at any moment, and he didn't want to. Not yet. It was way too soon, and he needed this to last for as long as possible, because he didn't know if he'd have another chance with her. And to be honest, this was the first time in a very long time that he'd simply been with a woman, without all the rules and constraints of the dom-sub relationship. Dean curled his fingers around her shoulders and held her down on him. He moaned long and loud. "You feel so much better than I remembered." "So do you," she murmured, rotating her hips in that way she was so good at. "I need more. Dean, please." In one fluid movement, he laid her on her back on the couch, put her ankles on his shoulders, and shoved into her. She screamed, and then moaned so loud it rang in his ears. "Is that better?" He leaned down and kissed her as he thrust into her with a slow and steady rhythm. Each time he pushed into her, his balls would slap against her ass, causing both of them to gasp and moan with pleasure. "Yes, Dean, yes," she cried, clutching at his biceps, pulling him closer and closer to her. "Olivia, baby." He nipped at her bottom lip. "You are so fucking wet. It makes me so hard to feel you like this." No matter how hard he fucked her or how deep he buried himself in her, it wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed their bodies to become one, to forever be just like they were right now. He ached to feel her without the barrier of a condom, to be closer to her than he had been with any other woman. "Kiss me." Her voice was heavy with her imminent release. Dean let her legs fall from his shoulders, and he leaned down and captured her lips. "Wrap your legs around me, Olivia." She did, as he kissed her harder. Olivia kept her legs locked around him, her feet tucked under his ass, and she rode the movements of his body, never letting much space to come between them. Now that some of his raging need had been quenched, he slowed to an easier pace, letting her orgasm build in intensity until she was writhing uncontrollably beneath him. "Dean, I'm gonna come," she wailed. He could feel her tightening around him. It was borderline painful, but it was also extremely erotic, and it pushed him to his limit. His spine tingled and his balls were 10 times heavier than they were before. The edges of his vision were becoming blurry as his orgasm built to its breaking point. He gritted his teeth and buried his face in her neck as she clung to him, both of them lost to the sensation of their orgasm. Beneath him, Olivia bucked and writhed as he jerked inside of her, giving in to the immense desire he had for this woman. She undid him in ways he never knew possible. Olivia sighed and stroked his sweat-dampened hair. "Wow," she laughed. Dean chuckled and kissed her neck. "Have I told you that you're incredible?" He adjusted his weight onto his arms and peered down at her. "No, never." Her eyes sparkled. "Well, you are." He kissed the tip of her nose and eased out of her. The overwhelming sense of emptiness he felt rocked him to his core. "Where's the bathroom?" "Down the hall, second door on the left," she said. Dean got off the couch. "Don't move," he said in his dom voice. Olivia blew out a breath, draped her arm over her face, and smiled. Dean was back, and he'd just had sex with her without dominating her. She really didn't know what to make of that, but she wasn't going to overanalyze it because she was just thrilled to have him back in her life. A shiver worked through her body. She grabbed the Afghan from the back of the couch and draped it over her naked body. A moment later, Dean reappeared. He was still naked and looking sexy as hell. She could really get used to seeing him like that all the time. He smiled. "Perfect." Positioning himself on the couch behind her, he put his arm over her stomach and pulled her to him so that they were in a spooning position. "I hope you didn't have plans today." She laughed. "No, nothing that can't wait." "Good.
because I have plans for us today.
You do? She turned her head to look at him. That's rather presumptuous of you, isn't it? This time he laughed.
I can be very convincing.
Olivia turned back around and snuggled into him. Yes, you most certainly can be. So tell me, what are these plans you have for us?
Well, for starters, we're going to do a whole lot of this.
He hugged her tighter to him, and she felt his semi-erect cock pressing against her.
And then I'm going to make love to you, Olivia.
Dean nuzzled her neck and kissed her earlobe.
I'm not going to dominate you, and I'm not going to fuck you. I'm going to make slow, passionate love to you.
Her heart raced at that thought. She'd never had a man make love to her before, at least not that she was aware of, and not like Dean had just explained it. Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything, and I will answer honestly.
Have you ever done this before? She ran her fingers across his knuckles and then up his hand towards his wrist.
Done what?
Have sex without being a dom. Lounge around on the couch, naked, snuggling.
It's been a very long time. I would venture to say I haven't done anything like this since right after college. I was in a serious relationship for about 2 years, post-grad. After that, I became a dom.
Why?
He laughed. Why what?
Why did the relationship end? Why did you become a dom? I assume that the two are somehow related. She continued to drag her fingers up and down his arm and hand, loving how his skin rose in goosebumps beneath her touch. Dean nuzzled her neck again, and his breath was warm against her ear.
You're much too perceptive.
And you're avoiding the question. He cupped the side of her face and turned her head towards him. Then he found her lips in a soft kiss.
I'm not avoiding. It's just not pleasant to talk about.
I'm sorry. If you don't want to talk about it.
No.
He smiled and traced her lips with his thumb.
Trust and communication, remember? I will tell you anything you want to know. All you ever have to do is ask.
She swallowed hard and nodded, remaining silent, waiting for him to continue. It was a funny feeling to know that all she ever had to do was ask, and he would be honest with her. This must be what he'd been talking about when he emphasized the whole trust thing. It was kind of surreal.
Her name was Laura, and she was my college sweetheart. I thought she was the one, until I found out she'd been cheating on me for almost a year. Our entire relationship was based on lies. I tried to talk to her, to work things out, and she wanted no part of it.
Oh, wow. Olivia took a deep breath. That explains so much. It was all the justification she needed for why he'd reacted to her the way he had.
Yeah, I guess it does.
He rolled her onto her back and looked into her eyes.
I want to trust you, Olivia. I want to be able to talk to you about anything at any time. But in order to do that, you have to trust me first. Do you?
Yes, she answered without hesitation. If I didn't trust you, I would never have let you do all that stuff you did to me. She turned away, embarrassed. He turned her to face him again.
Did you like all of that stuff I did to you?
She caught her bottom lip between her teeth and let the memories of their time together run through her mind. Tying her legs to the bed, the spanking, sex in the club while everyone watched. Just the thoughts had her becoming excited. Yes, I liked it. All of it, she whispered.
Do you trust me to show you more? To push you just a little further?
Push her further? She didn't know what he had in mind, but she'd be lying if she said she wasn't intrigued by the idea. She was also slightly nervous about it. What if she didn't like what he did?
Olivia.
He placed a chaste kiss on her lips.
Do you trust me to show you more?
He repeated. Swallowing, she said, "Yes."
Dean smiled. "You know that if I ever do anything you don't like, you can just use your safe word, and I will stop. I will never do anything to hurt you or make you uncomfortable."
"I know. I trust you. I really do."
And she meant that to the bottom of her soul. In fact, she'd never trusted a man as fully as she trusted Dean. There was just something about him that not only demanded respect, but also commanded trust. "That makes me very happy." Dean pressed his mouth to hers and parted her lips with his tongue, kissing her slow and languid. "Now, I have a very important question for you. Please answer it truthfully, and I won't get mad. I promise."
"Okay."
"Now that your article is written, are you out of the lifestyle? I mean, do you have any desire to continue to learn how to be my submissive?"
Olivia's heart stopped. How was she supposed to answer that when the truth conflicted with what her heart and body wanted? Book 4. Dean's heart raced, and cold fear rushed through his veins as he waited for Olivia's response. This particular question had been on his mind since he read her article. She admitted that the only reason she was at that club or getting involved with him was for that article. So now that it was published, she really didn't have a reason to keep with this lifestyle. He hoped and prayed that he would be reason enough for her.
"Olivia."
She took a deep breath and looked away from him. His gut clenched. This wasn't good. Dean turned her face back to his and kissed her softly, wanting her to know that there was no pressure and that all he wanted was the truth.
"Whatever you tell me, I won't be mad,"
he whispered, brushing his lips over hers. He meant that too. If Olivia told him that she didn't want anything to do with this lifestyle ever again, he would consider giving it up for her. Not completely, but he would be willing to compromise. He'd give up going to the club, to always being in control. They'd just had sex without any rules or roles, and in his opinion, it had been fantastic. So much so that he could get used to doing that with her every night. Olivia reached up and caressed his cheek. Then she smiled faintly. "Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined myself in this type of relationship or lifestyle. I found myself in it because my boss made me get into it." She paused and licked her lips. "But then I met you, and it's like everything changed." Okay, this wasn't sounding so bad, he thought.
"Changed how?"
"Like I said in my article, you opened my eyes to a whole new world that I never knew existed. You taught me what it means to have a man truly love and respect me, and most importantly, you showed me who I am. Without you, I know I'd still be a scared, insecure woman who believed that I wasn't good enough to give any man pleasure." Dean searched her eyes, hoping that he understood her correctly, hoping that he wasn't just hearing what he wanted to hear. He opened his mouth to ask when she spoke up again. "I'll be honest," she smiled. "I don't know if I'm capable of living this type of lifestyle day in and day out. I don't want to be like those women at the club who are collared and leashed and act like they're starved for attention."
"Olivia, it's not."
She held up her hand to silence him. "I know that that's not how it really is. You've explained all of that to me. But as an outsider, and as a newbie, that's how it looks to me. I actually felt sorry for those women. I wondered what was so wrong with them that they'd be willing to degrade themselves like that. What man is worth that kind of humiliation?"
"Wow."
Dean blew out a breath and rolled back so that his head was resting along the back of the couch.
"I had no idea you felt that way." This definitely wasn't boding well for him. "Did I ever make you feel that way?"
His stomach rolled at the thought of the one time he'd made her sit at his feet in the club. He hadn't thought twice about it because that's just how things were at Allegiant. Subs sat at their master's feet unless told otherwise. Olivia rolled onto her side, faced him, and draped her leg over his. "No, you've never once made me feel that way. but I'm afraid if I get any deeper into this lifestyle, I will start to feel that way, or that others will see me the same way I've seen them.
Oh, baby.
Dean lay on his back and pulled her on top of him. She straddled him and their naked bodies were entwined. Her hot pussy rested on his cock and he felt himself coming to life, thickening and hardening.
I swear to you that I will never, ever do anything to make you feel like that. It would kill me if I did.
I know. She leaned down and took command of his lips, kissing him unlike she'd ever kissed him before, and she pushed her hips down just enough so that she rubbed against his growing erection. He groaned, and Olivia moaned into his mouth. Without you, I never would have considered this lifestyle.
And without you, I don't want this lifestyle.
Olivia slightly pulled away.
What? I mean it.
He put one hand on the back of her neck and the other on her lower back, holding her down on him, not wanting to lose the warmth of her body on his.
I want you, Olivia. You mean more to me than this lifestyle, and if I have to choose, then I choose you.
Dean, she whispered. He noticed the tears that welled in her eyes. I'm not asking you to choose.
You're not?
Okay, he was officially confused. No, she laughed. But I am asking you to compromise.
Oh, thank God. I can do that. What do you suggest?
He slid his hand down to her ass and pushed her against his now fully erect cock, causing her to moan and rotate her hips. I like being your submissive, Dean. I like letting you push me to try new things. But I do have limits.
Name them,
he said without hesitation.
Whatever they are, just tell me.
Dean smiled.
See, this is what I've been trying to teach you, Olivia. Mutual respect, trust, and communication. It's good to discuss your limits.
He was excited to have this conversation with her. It gave him hope that whatever was happening between them could actually survive and thrive. I don't ever want to put on a leash. If we go to the club, I get to sit on your lap, unless we're playing and I'm presenting for you. His cock jerked at the thought of her kneeling in front of him at the club. Hell, hearing her speak like that was enough to drive him crazy.
Done. What else?
Having sex in front of people, like we did? That was... She looked away, embarrassed.
It's okay, baby. You can say it. It was fucking hot.
He winked. Olivia laughed. Yeah, it was hot. I liked it, and I wouldn't mind doing it again. But no matter what, don't ever share me, Dean. Don't ever let a man touch me while you are. Dean felt his entire body flush with warmth.
The thought of another man touching you is enough to make me want to draw blood.
He moved his hands from her neck and grabbed her hips with both of his hands, lifting her just enough for him to position his cock at her entrance. Then he guided her down on his length. They moaned simultaneously.
You're mine, Olivia, and no man will ever be allowed to touch you. Ever.
She let her body collapse fully on top of his, her mouth crushing his, and her pussy sliding up and down on his massive length, without a condom. He hadn't even thought about protection. His need to be with her, to claim her, to prove that he was the only man that would ever touch her, kiss her, fuck her, was so great that he knew he had to be with her, without any barriers. Olivia stilled and looked into his eyes. And I don't want you to train subs anymore. The thought of you being with another woman. Dean hugged her to him and pushed into her with jackhammer quick thrusts. Her moans and screams swirled around him, cementing her even further in his heart, mind, and body.
Never,
he said, nipping at her bottom lip.
I don't need anyone else, as long as I have you.
Yeah, she moaned and began to move in rhythm with him again.
Oh, God, Olivia.
He was overcome with so much emotion that in that moment it threatened to choke him. He wanted to shout that he loved her. He wanted to scream to the world that she was his, and his alone. Instead, he claimed her mouth, kissing her slowly, fucking her the same way.
No one but me will ever see you like this. Do you hear me? No one. You're mine.
Yes. She nodded and kissed him again. He had no idea where this possessiveness came from. There had been plenty of women in the past. He'd train them, enjoy them, even have feelings for them, but he'd always release them to go find a master. Olivia was different, though. He'd known the moment he'd seen her that he had to have her, and that he had to train her and then keep her for himself. She bore down on him, rotating her hips in a circular motion. His stomach clenched as he thrust up into her, burying his cock all the way inside of her. The wet heat of her pussy enveloped him, burned him, made him want to come so hard he'd pass out from the pleasure. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had sex without a condom, and he'd forgotten just how amazing it felt. Dean squeezed her ass cheeks, spread them, and plunged deeper into her.
Shit, baby. Yeah, that's it. Make it feel good.
He arched his neck and closed his eyes, luxuriating in the ecstasy of her body. Still, he wanted more. He wanted to give her more.
Tell me what you want, Olivia. Tell me what I can do to make you feel good, baby.
Kiss me. She moaned when his lips landed on hers, then again when he ran his fingers down her crack, circling her forbidden entrance. I want to feel you. Come inside of me. Her voice was so low and needy, he didn't know if he'd heard her correctly.
Baby,
Yeah, he wanted to be inside of her without a condom, but he hadn't planned on coming inside of her.
Are you sure?
The thought of releasing into her, of marking her in the most intimate way possible, was tempting. He was hard-pressed to say no, so he wanted to be sure that it's definitely what she wanted. Yeah, I want to feel you like that, Dean.
You're going to kill me,
he said. He knew he was clean, and based on her lack of sexual experience, he guessed she was clean too. That was probably a discussion they should have had prior to doing this, but it was too late now. I'm on birth control, she whispered. That eased his concerns, enough for him to just let go, to lose himself and drown in her body and the intense emotions coursing between them. Moments later, he felt Olivia tightening around him, which was much more intense without a condom, and he swelled. Before either of them started to orgasm, he knew it was going to rock his world, unlike anything he'd ever experienced in his life. Dean wrapped his arms around her, not wanting to lose a second of contact.
I love you, Olivia.
He had no idea why he'd chosen to say that right now, but it just felt like the right time. He needed her to know how serious he was about her, about them. I love you too, Dean. He closed his eyes and held her close. Those were words he hadn't expected to hear from her, at least not yet anyway. But she'd said them, and that was all that mattered. From this point forward they belonged to each other, and if he had his way, nothing would ever change that. Seconds later, she came apart in his arms, writhing and moaning through her orgasm, showering his sensitive cock with her release. Then he jerked inside of her and spilled his seed, forever marking her as his. Wow, she laughed, burying her face in his neck. Will it always be this good? She asked. No. He stroked her hair, loving how she felt in his arms. It will only get better. Olivia laughed again. You're kind of cocky, you know that? It was his turn to laugh.
I'm confident. There's a difference.
Right. She lifted her head and looked at him, his heart constricted at the emotion he saw in her eyes. He still couldn't believe she confessed her love. It was like a dream come true. He smiled.
Will you go to the club with me tonight?
What do you have in mind?
Nothing you won't like. I promise.
He kissed her quickly on the lips.
But I do have something planned, and for it to work, I need you to meet me there. 9 o'clock. Not a moment sooner or later. Can you do that?
A slow smile spread across her beautiful face. Yeah, I can do that.
Good. Oh, and wear that outfit you were wearing the first night we met.
Olivia cocked her head and gave him an odd look. Okay, now I'm really curious.
Dean laughed. Good. At least I know you'll be there.
Of course I'll be there. Why wouldn't I?
He shrugged awkwardly. I don't know. Maybe you'll change your mind about me after I leave.
Who says I'm going to let you leave?
I like the way you think.
Olivia sat inside Allegiant. As Dean requested, she sat at the end of the bar, wearing the same short skirt that she'd worn the very first time she'd been there. She was even sipping the same drink. No matter how hard she begged and pleaded this afternoon, Dean would not tell her what he had planned. Her excitement was hard to contain.
It's been a while since I've seen you here.
The sound of Master Steve's voice ruined her good mood. He sat on the bar stool next to her and leaned over to get a closer look at her.
Still no collar, I see.
Her stomach did somersaults as she glanced around looking for Dean. Why wasn't he here yet? He said 9 o'clock exactly. It was now 5 after 9. She smiled politely and took another drink. Master Steve reached over and subtly grazed his fingers up her arm. She flinched away.
So, are you finished with your training? I'd really like to make you my submissive, Olivia. We would have a lot of fun together.
Olivia cleared her throat. She knew she couldn't be disrespectful to a dom, but she really wanted to tell him to go fuck off. There was something very creepy about this man. No, sir. I'm not finished with my training. That wasn't a lie. Dean was still training her, but he was training her for himself. Steve laughed.
Sir,
he cocked a brow.
You're learning well. Master Dean is an effective teacher, isn't he?
Yes, sir. Master Dean is the best. He's very kind. She noticed the scowl that pulled at Steve's mouth and the way his eyes darkened. That was odd.
Oh, I see what's happening.
Steve leaned back and smiled, swirling the ice in his glass and then taking a slow sip.
You're falling for your master.
Olivia took a calming breath. Steve acted so smug and superior. She really wanted to slap him. And where the hell was Dean? She didn't know how much longer she could sit here next to Master Steve and listen to him. The smell of his cologne was making her sick.
This isn't the first time this has happened. Master Dean just has a way about him. All of his subs develop feelings for him.
Steve spun on the bar stool so that he was facing her.
Let me give you some advice. Master Dean never takes a sub for himself. And as much as I hate to say it, to him, you're not any different than the rest. You're better off to just lock away your emotions, finish your training, and find a dom who will respect you.
Her patience was shot, and it was on the tip of her tongue to tell him just how wrong he was. Dean told her that he loved her, and he didn't need anyone else as long as he had her, and that he would never allow another man to touch her, and she believed him. Every single word. No matter what Steve said, Olivia knew it wasn't true. She knew Steve was just trying to make Dean look bad, so that she would agree to become his sub. Well, that wasn't going to happen.
I told Master Dean before, I'm interested in being your dom. I still am.
Thank you, Master Steve, but... From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Dean. Just like the first night they'd met, he was seated in an armchair, looking sexier than sin and dangerous as hell. Her heart raced at the sight of him. Dean caught her gaze, smiled, and crooked his finger at her, beckoning her to come to him. Thank God. She turned to Master Steve and smiled. Excuse me. Olivia climbed off the bar stool and made her way towards Dean. Just like the first time, her heart was lodged in her throat, and she was nervous. When she stopped in front of him, he patted his leg. She couldn't stop the smile that spread across her face. Olivia licked her lips and sat on his lap.
Hi,
he said. Hi. It was obvious that he was recreating their first meeting, but she didn't know why. In all truth, It didn't matter why. It was sweet of him to do it, and it was exciting.
What's your name?
She laughed. Okay, this was now just silly. Olivia.
Olivia. I like how that rolls off my tongue.
Her face warmed from her blush. He hadn't said that the first night. Thank you.
Come here.
He grabbed the back of her head and pulled her mouth down to his. The moment their lips touched, fire raged through her body. It never ceased to amaze her how much power he had over her and her body. A single touch, or a swift kiss, had the ability to ignite her passion to an unmanageable level. When he released her, she gasped for breath. His kisses had that effect on her. Being here with him really was like the first time all over again. And then fear struck her. She wouldn't make the same mistakes again. Master Dean, there's something I need to tell you. She watched the way he sensuously licked his lips, and she hoped that what she was about to tell him wouldn't change anything between them. The fact that she was going to be honest should account for something, though.
You know you can tell me anything, Olivia.
Nodding, she said, after all of the success of my first article, my boss wanted to send me back in here to get information about an article written from the perspective of a dom. Dean gave a curt nod of his head.
So you're here for another article?
The tone of his voice frightened her. No. I told Tracy if she wanted another article that she had to send someone else. I refused to betray you in that way. He cupped her cheek with his hand and smiled.
Thank you for being honest with me, Olivia, and for refusing to write another article. I know it's your job, and I can tell you're really good at it, but I don't want to have our personalized broadcast any more than it already has been.
He winked. I agree, she smiled.
Good. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think it's time we get down to business.
He gave her a look that clearly said, present to me. Olivia got off his lap and kneeled in front of him in a submissive position. With her head down, she couldn't see what he was doing, but she could hear him just fine. First was the sound of his zipper being pulled down, and then some rustling movements.
Look at me, baby.
His voice had deepened, and she realized for the first time just how much she'd missed his dom voice. It sent tingles through her body. She lifted her head to look at him, and she noticed he'd pulled his pants down his hips. His erection drew her attention from his face.
Do you like looking at my hard cock?
He asked, wrapping his hand around the base of it. Yes, sir. She hadn't seen many in her life, but this was by far the nicest one she'd ever seen.
Would you like to taste it?
Her heart tripped several beats. Yes, sir.
Hold your hair back so I can watch you.
Olivia gathered her hair into her hand and then lowered her head. She licked over the tip and then down his length before sucking him all the way into her mouth. Dean's thighs tensed, and he inhaled sharply. She smiled around him, happy that she had the ability to give him such immense pleasure.
Yeah, that's it, Olivia. Suck my cock.
He lifted his hips, pushing himself further into her mouth.
Ah, yes. Feels so fucking good.
She was so focused on Dean, on the feel of him in her mouth, on the moans and grunts of approval he was making, and on how aroused she was, that she didn't give a second thought to the fact that she was giving him a blowjob in the middle of a club. Her peripheral vision allowed her to see people watching, but she didn't care. It only aroused her more, made her panties even wetter than they already were. Dean's gaze, though, it was on her, and it never wavered once. And then she felt someone behind her. She looked up at Dean, whose eyes had darkened.
I'm sure Olivia would be more comfortable sitting on my lap while she did that,
Steve said with a laugh. Her blood ran cold. Didn't Steve get the point? She wasn't interested in him, and she'd bluntly told him so. The look Dean gave Steve was cold, feral, and if it could kill, Steve would be dead right now.
Go away, Steve.
Dean's voice sounded more like a growl than anything.
I've already told you. Olivia isn't available.
She stopped sucking on Dean and kept her head down, waiting and hoping that Steve would just leave them alone. Soon.
She's not collared,
Steve said.
Not yet.
Dean's voice was tight, and he was clearly aggravated.
You've always shared in the past. Why are you guarding this one so closely?
Damn it, Steve. Dean patted Olivia's arms to let her know to get up. She did, and Dean pulled his pants back up and zipped them. She stood to the side and watched as Dean got in Steve's face.
What the hell is your problem? You know the rules, and the etiquette. You don't take another dom sub. She told you no, and I told you no. Now back the fuck off, or I will report you to the owner.
Steve put his hands up in a show of surrender.
Hey, easy, man.
I saw she was uncollared, and I knew you were just her trainer.
That's where you're wrong.
Dean reached out and put his arm around Olivia's waist and pulled her to his side.
Olivia and I have already discussed it. She will become my sub. So, if you know what's good for you, you'll just leave her alone.
All right. Steve backed up a few steps.
Okay, sorry.
Olivia blew out a breath. Wow, that was intense. For a moment she thought for sure that it was going to escalate into a physical fight. Thank you, she whispered, clutching him.
For what?
He looked down at her. You promised you wouldn't let any other man touch me, and you didn't. You stood up for me, for us. No one had ever done anything like that for her before. She wasn't quite sure how to handle it.
Oh, baby.
He kissed her on the forehead.
I'm sure I don't want anyone touching you, almost as much as you don't. Besides, like I told you, Master Steve isn't good for you.
But if he was, would you have let him? Dean laughed.
Fuck no. There's one thing you need to know about me, Olivia. I don't share well under normal circumstances, and I sure as hell will not share the woman I love.
Her heart raced, her pulse quickened, and an uncontrollable grin spread across her face. Dean loved her. She still couldn't believe it, but she knew she'd never tire of hearing it.
Come on, let's go to my dungeon room. We have some unfinished business, and I don't want any more interruptions.
Olivia nodded, and Dean led her out of the club and towards his private room. Once inside, he removed his shirt and then his pants, leaving him completely naked. She didn't know why, but she blushed at the sight of his erection. His gaze devoured her for a very brief moment, and she was a bit uncomfortable. He wasn't saying anything, nor was he using his dom voice to give her instructions, so she really had no idea what to do.
Tell me what you want, baby.
I want you. He grinned.
I know. But how do you want me? What do you want me to do to you? Or is there something you want to do to me?
He was closing the distance between them. Stepping up to him, she stood behind him, reaching around, wrapping her hand around his length, and slowly stroked down and then up.
Shit.
He groaned, drawing out the word.
That feels so good.
Olivia peppered his back and shoulders with lingering kisses, her hand working harder and faster. It had been a long time since she'd given a hand job, and she hoped she was doing it right. Based on his reaction, she assumed she was doing just fine. She could feel his cock growing, and she knew he was close to coming. Keeping her hand wrapped tightly around his shaft, she slipped around to face him. His head was still down, his gaze focused on what she was doing. Dean, she whispered. God, she loved this man more than her own life. He was sexy and smart, and he was all hers. He grabbed the back of her head and pulled her to him for a kiss. Then he tore the shirt from her body in a manner that some might consider violent, but not her. She found it erotic. She pressed her breasts into his chest, leaning into his kiss and stroking its cock harder, faster.
Oh, God. Olivia.
He pushed his hips forward.
You're going to make me come.
He nipped at her bottom lip, and she moaned. Her clit throbbed with need as she squeezed her thighs together in a feeble attempt to ease her need. There was only one thing that would help her. Olivia took his hand, slipped it up her very short skirt, and put it between her legs. Please, touch me. He looked down at her, his eyes dark and hungry. His words trailed into another moan when her palm circled around the head of his cock. Please, Dean, I need to feel you. She moved his hand in a circular motion and ground her pussy against it. I need this, Dean. I need you, she whimpered. His thumb pushed firmly on her clit, and she swore her knees were going to give out from the pleasure. It had only been a few hours since they'd been together like this, but it felt like eternity. In that moment, Dean moved out of her reach, and then stilled as if trying to figure something out. She watched and waited, her need raging out of control. Dean pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, stealing her breath and making her dizzy. She loved it when he kissed her like that. His hands coursed down her back to her ass. He squeezed and then lifted her. Her skirt bunched around her waist, leaving her pantyless crotch exposed to him and his erection. She wrapped her legs around his waist and waited for him to enter her, waiting for the feel of his hard cock filling her. Instead, he pinned her to the door and continued to kiss her. Olivia could feel the hot, hard length of his dick resting against her pussy lips. It was a delicious tease, but she was in no mood for games. She wanted her dom, now. Dean, please, she begged.
Not here.
His voice was deep, breathless, filled with need. He traced her lips with his finger, and then trailed it down the side of her body until he found her breast.
Not here,
he repeated, setting her back on her feet. The sudden lack of contact left her shivering and feeling alone. She looked at him with confusion. Was he planning to take her home or something? She truly hoped not, because she wasn't sure she'd be able to wait that long. Then he surprised her by scooping her up into his arms and carrying her to the bed. He gently laid her down and brought his body over hers.
Before we go any further, there's something we need to take care of.
What? He reached under the pillow and pulled out a box that looked like a necklace box. Dean opened it to reveal a gorgeous black and turquoise collar. She gasped with surprise. Sure, they'd talked about her becoming his submissive, but this made it official. This made it so the world knew.
Olivia, will you wear my collar? Will you exclusively be my submissive?
Yes, she whispered and shook her head.
Good. I'm going to put this on you as soon as I'm done making love to you.
He tossed the collar onto the nearby couch. Dean spread her legs with his knees and settled between them. Then he captured her lips and kissed her, nipping at her bottom lip, sucking on it in an erotic way that had her pushing her hips up into him. He put his hand on her waist.
Olivia, baby, I told you, no rushing.
She groaned with frustration. Fine, but don't tease me too long. She trailed her fingers down his muscular arm and around his back. He shuddered beneath her touch, and she smiled. It was amazing how much she loved this man, her dom. That was so strange to say. Please, make love to me, Dean. He left her lips and kissed down her neck.
Sounds like you're rushing me.
He chuckled softly as he continued his descent down her body. She really didn't want to rush him, because she wanted this to last as long as possible. However, she really wanted him to put that collar on her too. Dean found her lips once more, kissing her until her lips went numb. Then he made another slow descent down her body, his lips leaving tiny, searing kisses on her skin. She reached down and threaded her hands into his hair, luxuriating in how soft the strands felt between her fingers. She felt his mouth close around one of her nipples, and it was like an electric shock straight to her clit. She wiggled beneath him. "I want you on top," he whispered as he dragged his mouth back to hers. She didn't know why that took her by surprise, but it did. "Okay," she mumbled against his lips. Next thing she knew, Dean rolled them over so that she was on top. He reached down and grabbed his cock, positioning it at the clenched opening of her pussy, and then very gently he eased his cockhead into her. Then he stopped. "Take as little or as much as you want, baby. Make it feel good for you." He rotated his hips ever so slightly, just enough so that she felt the movement. "Dean." His name came out as needy. Olivia put her hands on either side of his head and stared at him. His eyes were hazy and filled with desire. It was that look that was her undoing. A seductive smile pulled at her mouth. If he wanted things slow, he should have stayed on top, because just having part of him inside her was enough to make her want to come. "You're killing me, baby," he groaned. His grip on her waist had tightened, and she knew he was having a hard time not moving, not ramming his cock all the way into her until she screamed his name. She smiled as she lowered herself down onto him, wincing slightly as she did. Olivia couldn't recall a time that she'd had this much sex in one day. Her body gave her evidence of the toll it was taking, but she ignored it, wanting to be with him more than she cared about the pain. Olivia found his lips and kissed him hard as she rotated her hips on him, driving his cock deeper into her with each slow downward motion of her body. She groaned. "It's so hard to go slow." He nipped at her bottom lip. "I know, baby. Do whatever feels good." His hands found her ass again, and he squeezed her cheeks, guiding her up and down on him. Their need for each other was too great. She needed more, and from the way he clutched her ass and gritted his teeth, she guessed he did too. "I need more, Dean. Please, fuck me like you did the first night we met." She brought herself down on him hard, causing him to cry her name. Digging his heels into the mattress, he tightened his grip on her ass and fucked her hard and fast. She met each of his upward thrusts with a downward one of her own. The sounds of their moans reverberated around them. She was so close to coming already. The way he moved in and out of her, the way he held her, kissed her, moaned in between their kisses was incredible. Hell, everything about this man was incredible, and she was hopelessly in love with him. Never in a million years did she think she'd ever be this happy. Dean moved one hand up to palm her head, and the other remained on her ass, guiding her up and down on his cock. "You feel incredible." He kissed her, his tongue invading her mouth with a frantic, needy desperation that she matched stroke for stroke. "Yeah," she moaned, increasing the speed at which she moved on him. She curled her fingers against his chest, her nails digging into his skin as she sat fully up on him. "So good." She flung her head back and closed her eyes. The feel of Dean's cock stroking her inner walls, driving her to madness, was euphoric. She knew that this one time wasn't going to be enough. She wondered if a lifetime would be enough. His large warm hands covered her breasts, his thumbs rolled over her nipples, sending an extra jolt of pleasure straight to her clit. "I can't get enough of you, baby." He clutched her hips and then sat up so that they were chest to chest. She hooked her legs around his back and rocked on him as their mouths explored each other, like it was the first time they had ever kissed. The room began to spin. Her mind went fuzzy, and the only thing she could focus on was Dean's cock inside of her pussy clenching, desperate to hold him there as her clit throbbed with her impending release. She rocked on him harder and faster, her moans getting louder as he swelled inside of her. His arms held her tighter, to the point that she wasn't sure where she stopped and he started. And that was fine with her, because in her mind, they were one. "Come for me, baby," he whispered, nipping at her ear. "Olivia," he groaned. "Please, baby. I want to feel you come on my cock." She loved it when he talked like that, and when he called her baby. It made her feel special, like she was the only woman on earth that was worthy of his love and his attention. They both increased the speed and intensity of their movements until she screamed his name and dropped her forehead to his shoulder. It took several moments for the tremors to ease from her body, leaving her limp and spent. Dean showered her shoulder and collarbone with kisses. She stroked and naped his neck, holding on to him for as long as she could.
I don't think I'll ever get enough of this. Of you,
he said in between kisses. She said sleepily. Me either. They sat like that in each other's arms for several minutes.
So, do you think that's something that you can write about?
Olivia laughed. I think I'd get fired if I wrote about that. He smiled.
Then I guess we'll just have to keep practicing until we find something that works.
Dean winked and then kissed her. She knew she'd found the man she was meant to be with, and she was hopeful for the future. The end. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of Forbidden Love, Complete Series by Lucia Jordan, narrated by Akea Burdine. This audiobook was produced by Wild Hearts Romance. To keep up with new releases, visit wildheartsromance.com. All rights reserved.